Chapter 1167. 9 swords, each sword hit the Shura's vital points. If it was an ordinary person, they would definitely die after taking these 9 swords. The Shura was not an ordinary person, it was not even human. Therefore, when it fell to the ground, its body seemed to have opened up a hole. Black chi flowed out from the wound, and in an instant, black yin chi enveloped its entire body. Below the tree of life, the originally warm scene of grass and birds flying in the air turned into a hell on earth. The cold wind roared, causing people to shudder. The Shura blade was still in the Shura's hand, but its light dimmed. Tang Zheng's heart trembled, his eyes almost popped out. He shouted in disbelief, "Shura!" The Shura did not respond to him, quietly lying on the ground as if it was really dead. He wanted to rush up and see what happened, but he was pulled back by Tian Chanzi. "Be careful. Don't go," Tian Chanzi said with a heavy expression. "If the Shura is dead, it would be useless for you to go. Instead, facing Chiyu, you won't have a chance to escape. If it's not dead, you won't be able to help." Tang Zheng stopped in his tracks, understanding that Tian Chanzi's words were reasonable. The two of them stared at the Shura, and the others also stared at the Shura. The Shura gave them too much of a shock. No one could be sure that the Shura had died like this. Even Chiyu could not be sure. The Shura did not have any life force, so it was impossible to determine whether it was dead or alive from afar. Chiyu carefully walked towards the Shura. Although he was confident in his attack, he could not be at ease without personally confirming it. Chiyu stopped in front of the Shura. He saw that the yin chi in the wounds was leaking out, causing the Shura's body to be completely covered by a layer of dense yin chi. The Shura's body was actually becoming blurry. What's going on?" Chiyu muttered to himself. "Humph, no matter what's wrong with you, I'll give you a few more swords." With a thought, he pointed his finger at the Shura. The 9 war spirit swords fell from the sky at the same time, attacking the Shura. Pu. The war soul sword passed through the Azura's body without any hindrance. The Azura did not have the slightest reaction, but his body had a few more holes. When the others saw this scene, they were so shocked that they trembled all over. "Crap!" Tang Zheng subconsciously cried out in alarm, his face turning even paler. Could it be that Shura is really dead? This was far beyond his expectations. The devil clansmen simultaneously revealed a joyful expression, and some even cheered. Azura had given them a great deal of pressure. Seeing Azura die, the huge rock in their hearts was immediately removed. The corners of Chiyu's mouth also curled up in joy, and his eyes became relaxed. He turned his head to look at Tang Zheng, who was still in shock as if to say, "Tang Zheng, now you know how powerful I am." Back then, in the world of spirits and souls, Chiyu had seen the power of Azura, and naturally had an assessment of his strength. He had to admit that Azura was indeed extraordinary, and was a natural anomaly. In fact, the Dizong of Goguryeo even needed to use the Ksitigarbha Sutra to truly suppress it. As for the matter of the Dizong of Goguryeo teaching Tang Zheng the Ksitigarbha Sutra, Chiyu and the inner demons were very clear about it. However, things like inheritance were not just because they could learn the Ksitigarbha Sutra in Tang Zheng's body. The Ksitigarbha Sutra was a secret, and other than Tang Zheng, no one else could learn it. Therefore, even though Chiyu knew that the Ksitigarbha Sutra could suppress Azura, he could not use this method. Now that he had killed Azura with his own strength, Chiyu's confidence gradually rose. When he was hiding in Tang Zheng's body, he was really suppressed by Tang Zheng, and even Chiyu's heart blood was sucked away. If he had Chiyu's heart, then after he was reborn, his strength would definitely not stop at the threshold of the Mahayana realm, and he would not have to spend so much effort to deal with Azura. Roar. Suddenly, a roar came from Azura's mouth. It was earth-shattering, and it shook the leaves of the trees. Azura exploded with a bang, and it turned into wisps of yin chi that soared into the sky like a tornado, sweeping towards Chiyu. Chiyu's heartstrings trembled, and he tried to block it, but he found that the yin chi had already gathered from all directions, enveloping his whole body. It seeped into his body from his mouth, nose, ears, eyes, and even his pores. "Ah!" Chiyu screamed in shock. "What's going on? It's not dead." Azura was indeed not dead, but it had changed. This change made Chiyu panic, and he watched helplessly as the yin chi seeped into his body. He hurriedly urged his true chi to block the yin chi. However, the yin chi was fierce and unstoppable. Chi-Yu's eyes burst with a terrifying light, and he growled, "I want to see what ability you have, get out of here." Chi-Yu had rich battle experience, and after the initial panic, he immediately calmed down. War Soul Sword, enter my body. The 9 War Soul Swords merged into one and quickly shrank, until they were almost invisible to the naked eye. Then, Azura opened his mouth and the War Soul Sword flew in. This scene left Tang Zheng dumbstruck. He had been with the War Soul Sword all day, but he didn't know that it had this ability. The War Soul Sword disappeared, but in Chi-Yu's body, it was like a fish in water, walking through his meridians. Wherever the sword light passed, the yin chi would be swept away. The yin chi was pervasive. Although the War Soul Sword was very powerful, Chi-Yu's body was still rapidly consuming his life force. The surface of his skin gradually turned black, like charcoal. Chi-Yu obviously understood what this meant. If he could not expel the yin chi from his body in time, the yin chi would destroy his body. If the skin did not exist, where would the hair be? Without a physical body, Chi-Yu's power would naturally not exist, and he would not be a match for the Azura. This guy looks like a killing machine, but I didn't expect him to have such intelligence. He actually used such a method to deal with me. Chi-Yu thought hatefully, and could not help but be puzzled. With his understanding of the Azura, it only had killing in its heart, and was equivalent to a walking corpse. Although it was powerful, its intelligence was effective. It only knew how to charge forward, and was not much different from a 3-year-old child. This time, the change in the Azura's attack was something that Chi-Yu had never seen before. This meant that its intelligence was actually increasing, which was extraordinary and did not match Chi-Yu's judgment. Strange, there must be something strange. Chi-Yu vowed. In imminent danger, he did not have the energy to search for the reason. He could only desperately urge the War Soul Sword to sweep away the yin chi. The Azura's yin chi was too strong. It covered the sky and covered the earth, completely enveloping Chi-Yu. Even if the War Soul Sword swept away the yin chi in an area, there would immediately be more yin chi seeping into his body, destroying all the previous efforts. Chapter 1168. The others stared at this scene unblinkingly. When they saw Chi-Yu's entire body turn into charcoal, they couldn't help but feel their blood run cold. Yin chi, this is the effect of yin chi. Tian Chanzi excitedly waved his fist as he spoke. Tang Zheng's eyes lit up. He naturally understood the power of yin chi. The reason why humans were unable to stay in the ghost realm for long periods of time was because yin chi was extremely harmful to the human body. It corroded a person's yang chi and ultimately led to death. Tang Zheng could freely travel through the ghost realm because he had the 9 young saint body. He did not fear yin chi. Or it could be said that yin chi was unable to corrode the powerful yang chi in his body. Chi-Yu himself was also a celestial with the 9 young saint body. However, his physical body had already been destroyed, leaving only his soul residing in Songyu's body. This body did not have many special features, so naturally it was unable to resist the corrosion of yin chi. The Shuro was born from the ghost realm's evil chi. Its yin chi is much more powerful than normal yin chi. Now it seems that it is indeed not normal. Chi-Yu is going to suffer a great loss. Tang Zheng inwardly nodded as he spoke. Yes, who would have thought that the Shuro would have such a move? This is truly an eye-opener. Tian Chanzi sighed. The two of them were not like Chi-Yu, who directly thought that the Shuro's wisdom was slowly budding. Otherwise, Tang Zheng would have been even more shocked. Dizong of Goguryeo had never mentioned that the Shuro's wisdom would be slowly budding. Naturally, Tang Zheng also did not think in this direction. The demons turned pale with fright. They were dumbstruck as they stared blankly at Chi-Yu. However, they were unable to do anything and were unable to interfere. Chi-Yu continued to use Battle Soul to sweep away the yin chi. Both sides were in a deadlock as they fought back and forth. Ah! Chi-Yu roared and puffed out his chest. Puff, puff, puff. Streams of blood gushed out from his body, and there were a few more bloody holes on his body. Chi-Yu's eyes were crimson red as he gritted his teeth and roared. With my blood, with my soul as the guide, blood will flow from the heavens to the earth. Blood flowed out of Chi-Yu's body like poisonous snakes. They fell to the ground and then wriggled in all directions. Everywhere they passed, the earth turned red. The vegetation was also dyed red and emitted a demonic light. The air was filled with a nauseating stench of blood. Coupled with the howling of the wind, it made one's heart turn cold. Tang Zheng was shocked to see a stream of blood swimming towards him. He hurriedly retreated and said, "Tianchanzi, retreat. There's something strange about this blood. Don't let the blood stain it." Tianchanzi also reminded. The two of them had unique eyesight. They could see that the blood was very strange, especially the words that Qiyu was chanting. They seemed to be an incantation. He was definitely using some strange divine ability that made people shudder. When Saint King heard these 16 words, his eyes were filled with shock. He had once seen these 16 words in the ancient records of the demon race. However, the description of these 16 words was not detailed. It only said that in ancient times, it was a very harmful spell that could not be easily used. Otherwise, it would have a backlash effect on the caster. The name of this spell was Blood Soul Sacrifice. It used blood and souls as a sacrifice. As for the specific effects, there were no records in the ancient records. Saint King also did not know. Seeing Qiyu use this divine ability that disappeared without a trace with his own eyes, Saint King was somewhat excited. He stared at Qiyu with incomparable fanaticism. Ah! A scream interrupted Saint King's thoughts. He subconsciously turned his head to look, only to see that the scream came from the mouth of one of his subordinates. The blood flowed to the feet of this person, and quickly flowed along his legs to the rest of his body. In an instant, it was full of his body. He looked like there were many red lines under his skin. It was very strange. He screamed and struggled, but there was no way to resist. In the end, he rolled on the ground to no avail. Saint King was about to rush over to rescue him, but found that this person had stopped rolling and was twitching nonstop. His skin quickly carbonized and finally stopped twitching. There was no life left, and he turned into black charcoal. A cold wind blew, and this body seemed to fall apart, turning into ashes and drifting away with the wind. When everyone saw this scene, they felt a chill run through their bodies. It was as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Looking at each other, many people screamed and fled. How could this spell be so strange? After cutting off a person's life, it still produced such a terrifying effect. "Quick, look at Qiyu!" Tang Zheng shouted and pointed at Qiyu. Everyone turned their heads to look, and found that Qiyu was changing. The originally carbonized skin was actually returning to normal little by little. His physical condition was recovering. Tang Zheng's head lit up as he understood what was going on. He cried out involuntarily. He's using a spell to absorb the life of others to make up for himself. This spell is too insidious. It's against the harmony of the heavens. Tianchanzi immediately identified. The demon race has many strange spells, and this is probably one of them. It's a pity that he's absorbing the life of his own people. Humph, he's really ruthless. Tang Zheng sneered and said, "Of course he's ruthless. He doesn't even care about the lives of hundreds of millions of people. What's the big deal about a few of his subordinates dying?" Indeed, it's not a big deal. The demon race has always had this tradition. Tianchanzi also agreed. Qiyu is absorbing the life of others. Doesn't that mean he can fight against the Shuras in Qi? Tang Zheng's head moved and suddenly sank. His expression became serious. Tianchanzi didn't answer, because it was still unknown who would win in the confrontation between this spell and the Shura. Everyone felt the danger. No one dared to let the blood near them, and fled like a swarm of bees. There was no blood, and Qiyu's condition worsened again. His skin turned black. Qiyu trembled violently. Bang! With a loud sound, he knelt on the ground with one knee and stubbornly raised his head. He didn't give in. Qiyu actually knelt. It was obvious how much damage the Shura had done to him. Saint King's expression kept changing. He was hesitant. Qiyu's importance to him was self-evident. If he really allowed Qiyu to be defeated by the Shura, then the demon race would be unable to recover. Their painstaking efforts to return would be in vain. No. He definitely couldn't accept this reality. Saint King's eyes were cold. He glanced at the people around him and immediately locked onto one of them. He grabbed him and threw him into the blood on the ground. Ah! Before that person could react, he was possessed by the blood. He immediately rolled on the ground and finally convulsed. He quickly carbonized and scattered with the wind. Chiyu's condition also quickly improved. His eyes gradually shone, and his life force recovered bit by bit. He looked at Saint King with eyes full of admiration. Saint King's heart was bitter, but for the sake of the great cause, he had to sacrifice his own subordinates. Your sacrifice is worth it. In the future, the great cause of the demon race will be due to your contributions. I will remember you. Saint King muttered to himself. As if comforting the souls of these people, Tang Zheng's pupils constricted, and he looked at Heaven Monk at the same time. His face turned pale, and he could see the shock in each other's eyes. Saint King didn't hesitate to sacrifice the lives of his subordinates. He even did it himself. Hurry up and run. Why are you still standing there like idiots? Tang Zheng roared, reminding the demon clan. The demons woke up from their dream and immediately scattered. Saint King caught 2 more people and let the blood attach to them. But the others fled, so he couldn't catch anyone for a while. I'll go stop him. Tian Chanzi volunteered and rushed in front of Saint King. With a shake of his long sword, he greeted Saint King with the heavenly fairy sword technique. Saint King was furious. You're courting death. Saint King's cultivation was higher than Tian Chanzi's. Naturally, he wasn't afraid of him. His sky-opening axe fiercely counterattacked Tian Chanzi. Chiyu's situation took a turn for the worse as he didn't have the new life force to continuously replenish him. Saint King saw this and was anxious. Facing Tian Chanzi's entanglement, he couldn't immediately win and couldn't bear to be disturbed. This can't go on. Saint King was very anxious. His face suddenly changed and he shouted, "Stop! All of you stop!" The demons subconsciously stopped and stood stiffly in the same place. They turned to look at Saint King with a complicated expression. Come back for me. The time has come when the ancestor needs you all. For the sake of the devil race's 1,000-year great undertaking, this is your honor. You all will forever be remembered by the devil race. You all are heroes of the devil race. The sage said sonorously. Many people who were hesitant and fearful immediately changed their expressions. Their eyes became determined, like martyrs who were going to die. They turned around and walked resolutely toward the blood. Their footsteps were heavy, with the determination to die. There was no panic in their footsteps, nor was there any panic or wavering like before. Tang Zheng saw this scene, and his heart sank. This was the demons. For the same goal, they were willing to die without caring about their own lives. What kind of spirit was this? Fearless spirit. Even for many righteous sects, it was extremely difficult for such a situation to occur. From this, it could be seen that the strength of the demon race was not undeserved, nor was it baseless. They were united, and did not fear death. This completely surpassed many of the scattered righteous sections. The demons are so terrifying. When we fight them in the future, we can't let our guard down. Tang Zheng silently made up his mind. Although the Azura currently had the upper hand, Tang Zheng did not think that he could completely crush the demon clan this time, and capture them all in one fell swoop. The demons were like wild grass. Even a wildfire couldn't burn them. They would grow again when the spring breeze blew. Across the long river of history, the demon's shadow had never been cut off. Naturally, it was impossible to completely destroy the demons with just a few people. Stop them! Tian Chanzi shouted. Tang Zheng's figure flashed and stopped a demon. However, the other side deliberately bypassed him, and threw themselves on the blood on the ground. Immediately, a victorious smile appeared on his face. Finally, this smile froze. Lines of blood covered his body. He was like a statue, motionless. He didn't even fall to the ground and wail. He was completely different from the people before. This made Tang Zheng sink deeper and deeper. In the blink of an eye, the demon's transformation made people feel awe and fear. Chapter 1169. The demons fell one after another, sacrificing more than 10 lives before Chiyu finally recovered. He was full of energy and vitality, his eyes emitting a terrifying light and murderous aura. Scent pound. Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi helplessly stared at each other. The two looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. The demons were not afraid of death, and would rather sacrifice their lives to help Chiyu. This was something they could not stop. Tianqianzi simply gave up on entangling with Saint King. Saint King also did not chase after him. Although his heart ached, his eyes were filled with pride. He looked at Tianqianzi in ridicule and said, "Do you think the demons are all afraid of death? Let me tell you, for the sake of the demon's great cause, anyone can be sacrificed." Tianqianzi coldly snorted and did not argue with him. The facts were indisputable. "What do we do?" Tianqianzi looked at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng secretly sighed. Shura and Qiyu, who would win and who would lose, was still unknown. They could only wait and see. Tianqianzi understood Tang Zheng's meaning and chose to remain silent. "Shura, get out of my body." Qiyu roared, his entire body erupting with an earth-shattering aura. Rays of light shone and Sword Qi soared into the sky. It was like a divine sword, causing people to tremble. Puff puff puff. A series of Yin Qi retreated from Qiyu's body. The Yin Qi tried to enter again, but Qiyu's body was like an iron wall, unable to move forward. This was the result of Qiyu activating his true Qi to seal all the openings in his body, building the strongest great wall, blocking the Yin Qi outside his body. Looking at the Yin Qi that was rushing left and right, Qiyu's face revealed a relaxed expression. He disdainfully said, "Shura, you are only SO. Watch me destroy you today." With that said, the War Soul Sword flew out from his body and steadily landed in Qiyu's palm. Qiyu stood proudly with his sword in hand like a god of war. Shua. The War Soul Sword descended and struck the Yin Qi with lightning speed. The Yin energy hurriedly retreated like a receding tide. Qiyu chased after it and quickly swung his sword a few more times, forcing the Yin Qi to retreat far away. "Now you know what fear is?" Qiyu was immensely pleased with himself as he laughed maniacally. The Yin Qi retreated with a whoosh, only stopping when it reached the trunk of the tree of life. Then it changed its form. Qiyu's pupils constricted, and his expression changed slightly. "Do you have any other tricks up your sleeve?" The Yin Qi stabilized and turned into the appearance of a human. This was a miniature version of the Shura, completely different from the previous Colossus. It was about the same height as a real person, but its eyes were less muddle-headed and more intelligent. Tang Zheng looked at this scene in disbelief. He never thought that the Azura could actually become like this. In the past, the Azura were all huge monsters. Very powerful. The Shura stretched out his slender finger and pointed at Qiyu. His words were filled with killing intent, but he seemed to be stuttering. "You can actually speak?" Qiyu was shocked. In the past, Shura had always been shouting and shouting, but he had never spoken a complete sentence. But now he could actually speak human language, no different from a normal person. Tang Zheng also looked at the Shura in surprise and muttered to himself, "The Shura has changed. What is going on? Look at his eyes, there is actually the light of wisdom. He is not a machine that only knows how to kill." He was very clear about the Shura's situation, but the current Shura was too unfamiliar. Not only had his body undergone a huge change, but he was also shining with wisdom. What was the reason for all these changes? Could it be that the battle with Qiyu had caused such a change? Looking at Qiyu's reaction, it was obvious that he did not know what was going on. Tang Zheng could not help but feel a little disappointed. Of course. I can speak." Facing Qiyu's question, the Shura stammered as he replied. Qiyu suddenly turned his head to look at Tang Zheng, and found that his reaction was similar to his own. He understood that all these changes were not because of Tang Zheng, but he could not figure it out, so he temporarily gave up the idea of using his brain cells and said, "So what if you can speak? You are still not my match." "Ha! Ha!" The Shura let out a short burst of disdainful laughter. His eyes were cold. It was obvious that he was refuting Qiyu. Qiyu frowned and directly used his actions to speak. The war soul in his hand exploded with a resplendent sword light and flew towards the Shura. A cold light flashed in the Shura's eyes. With a point of his finger, the Azura saber also flew up. It was obvious that the Azura saber was also very large, but now it had become the size of an ordinary sword. When the Azura saber flew out, a terrifying Yin Qi that caused people to tremble in fear was emitted from the Azura saber. Aowo! The sound of ghosts wailing and wolves howling rang out. A burst of pitch-black Yin Qi rose up from the Azura saber, and immediately transformed into a huge ghost head. It was incomparably ferocious. Wherever it passed, the temperature of the air would plummet and the cold wind would blow. If an ordinary person saw this scene, they would be scared out of their wits. However, Chi was not afraid at all. The power of the War Soul sword increased sharply. In an instant, the sword and blade collided. There were no sparks. Under the cover of such a strong yin chi, even sparks could not be shot out. The ferocious ghost head opened its mouth and bit onto the War Soul sword. The powerful yin chi wrapped around the War Soul sword, and the War Soul sword began to buzz and tremble. "Sword Soul, leave the sword!" Chi roared loudly. The War Soul sword also let out a high-pitched cry, as if it was responding to him. With a flash of light, a figure rushed out from the War Soul sword. It also opened its mouth and bit onto the ghost head. Immediately, the two sides fought back and forth, desperately biting and tearing at each other. Tang Zheng's eyeballs almost popped out because the figure that flew out from the War Soul sword was the War Soul. Back then, he had subdued the martyr's soul in ordinary balance's unmarked graveyard. This was also the origin of the War Soul sword's name. However, after the Sword Soul and the War Soul sword merged, the War Soul was replaced by the Sword Soul and never appeared again. At this moment, Qiyu actually summoned the Sword Soul and fought fiercely with the ghost head. This opened Tang Zheng's eyes and he had an idea. Could it be that the artifact spirit also left the magic treasure to fight? He had never thought about this before. At this moment he was suddenly enlightened and asked, "Inner demons, can the artifact spirit be separated from the magic treasure?" "Of course you can, but only when you reach the grade of sacred artifact or above can you do this." The inner demons replied without any surprise. "Why didn't you tell me before? You didn't ask." Tang Zheng rolled his eyes speechlessly. However, ordinary people don't have this ability. Even if they have a sacred artifact, it's not that easy to do this. The master must reach a high degree of compatibility with the magic treasure to be able to do this. Especially the higher the master's cultivation, the higher the grade of the magic treasure, and the further the artifact spirit can be away from the magic treasure. The inner demons explained. Chapter 1170. The Sword Soul and the Ghost Head fought wantonly. Yin Qi and Sword Qi danced in the air and soared up, causing the tree of life to scatter countless branches and leaves. The trunk was riddled with holes and juice flowed out, as if the tree of life was crying. This caused Tang Zheng to shake his head. This was not the way to go on. Qi Yu and the Azura had yet to determine a victor, and the tree of life was the first to be affected. "Saber Soul, kill." The Azura roared with killing intent. His voice was even more straightforward than before, as if he was adapting to speaking and becoming more proficient. The Azura was like a baby, gradually evolving from babbling. It was unknown what level he would reach in the end. The two words Saber Soul were obviously the name of the ghost head. The War Soul sword's artifact spirit was called Sword Soul, and the Azura Saber's artifact spirit was called Saber Soul. The Sword Soul and the Saber Soul had met their opponents and were locked in a stalemate. The Tree of Life is too dangerous. I'll go protect the Tree of Life. Tang Zheng decided that he could not sit still and wait for death. In a flash, he arrived in front of the Tree of Life. Streams of Yin Qi and Sword Qi surged over like a tide. He hurriedly cast a spell in an attempt to block them, but the battle between the Sword Soul and the Saber Soul was too intense. For a moment, he was like a small boat drifting in the sea, bobbing and sinking, extremely dangerous. "Five-clawed golden dragon, hurry up and help me!" Tang Zheng shouted. Previously, the five-clawed golden dragon had been indifferent, but now he could not help but summon it. The five-clawed golden dragon was lazy and uninterested in the battle. He said listlessly, "They haven't decided the victor yet. What's the hurry?" Tang Zheng rolled his eyes and said sternly, "Are you going to help or not?" The five-clawed golden dragon's heart trembled, knowing that Tang Zheng was about to flip out. He compromised and said, "Of course I'll help. Why are you so fierce?" Tang Zheng's arm flickered with a golden light. The five-clawed golden dragon tattoo was lifelike, and was about to soar into the sky. Suddenly, a gust of cold wind blew from above his head, causing him to feel as if he was bathing in the spring breeze. What happened? Tang Zheng understood that there was definitely something fishy, and hurriedly raised his head to look. A green light leaped into his eyes, and the leaves rustled as a branch drooped down. It seemed to be a large hand that lightly waved at Tang Zheng, as if it was waving at him. Tang Zheng rubbed his eyes, thinking that he was seeing things. But when he opened his eyes, he was sure that he wasn't seeing things. There really was a branch on the tree of life. The branch extended from his side, and a green light spread out from the branch, enveloping Tang Zheng. A powerful spiritual energy rushed from the top of his head into his brain. His whole body quivered, and the exhaustion of the previous battle and the consumption of his true qi were swept away. A feeling of good fortune struck his heart, and his true qi rushed up with whooshing sounds. Boom! Suddenly, there seemed to be a bomb exploding in his brain. His true qi rushed into Yuanying like a tide. Yuanying opened her eyes, which were as bright as stars. Yuanying's body became more three-dimensional. Her bones cracked and grew rapidly. Even hair grew out of Yuanying's skin. Yuanying is evolving. Tang Zheng was overjoyed, but he quickly suppressed his surprise and circulated the ancient Clear Heaven Scroll, guiding the flow of true qi. Second grade of the Divine Transformation Realm. After a while, he was stunned and only wanted to shout and cheer. He actually broke through at this time. Without a doubt, this was the effect of the Tree of Life. The green light emitted by the branch was filled with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. This was the Tree of Life helping him. Could it be that the Tree of Life also had a consciousness? His conjecture was immediately confirmed. After the branch went around him, it came to the front of the Sword Soul and the Saber Soul. The green light enveloped them in an instant, and the two sides that were in a deadlock trembled violently. The Saber Soul's ferocious face calmed down a bit, and the Sword Soul's sword qi also decreased sharply. Azura and Chi were shocked at the same time. They stared at the branch without blinking. They were the ones involved, and had the most profound experience. When the green light of the branch enveloped the Sword Soul and the Saber Soul, their hearts shook violently. They felt as if their magic weapons were about to leave them, and the connection between them became weak. Is the Tree of Life fighting back? Tang Zheng muttered to himself. Originally, he had always thought that although the Tree of Life was alive and significant, it would not fight back like a human. It would only passively take a beating. Now it seemed that his understanding of the Tree of Life was still too little. Of course it's fighting back. The inner demons answered his question. The Tree of Life is a symbol of the big world. In ancient times, the Tree of Life existed. It was protected by various forces and accepted people's worship. It's just that the Tree of Life did not show its attacking ability, but everyone knows that the Tree of Life is not without the ability to protect itself. Tang Zheng suddenly understood. He looked up at the Tree of Life. The leaves were still rustling and green. It seemed that in the blink of an eye, the Tree of Life gave him a completely different feeling. The wounds on the Tree of Life were healing little by little. The juice that flowed out seeped through the surface of the bark. Even the branches and leaves that fell on the ground slowly rose into the air and flew back to the tree. It was as if time was flowing backward. When the return button was pressed, everything was moving backward. Only the green light of the Tree of Life was particularly dazzling, attracting everyone's attention. Everyone looked at all this in a daze. For a moment, they were at a loss. Tian Chanzi suddenly realized something, and his eyes showed joy. He knew very little about the Tree of Life. In his era, not many people knew about the Tree of Life. As for the whereabouts of the Tree of Life, it was a big secret. Chiyu's expression became serious. He snorted coldly. With a thought, he actually forcefully summoned back the Sword Spirit. The Sword Spirit swayed and trembled as it returned to the War Soul Sword. Chiyu's face sank. He had already sensed that the Sword Spirit was injured. This injury did not come from the Shura, but from the Tree of Life. Damn it, I actually ignored it. After tens of thousands of years, my memory is not good. Chiyu said hatefully. The Shura knew nothing about the Tree of Life. When he also summoned back the Sword Spirit, he discovered that the Sword Spirit was injured. He roared at the Tree of Life with a sinister expression. Although the Shura had a bit of intelligence, he was not much different from a naughty child. He was not as meticulous and shrewd as Chiyu. However, the Shura was still rational. After seeing the power of the tree of life, he understood that it was not a good thing. Out of the most instinctive reaction, he did not rush forward to fight against the tree of life. Tang Zheng stared blankly at the battle that had ended just like that. He actually felt that it was unreal. Suddenly, a thought popped up from the bottom of his heart. The tree of life was so powerful that it could even calm the battle between the Shura and Qiyu. Then, how did the tree of life wither and die and then disappear? What kind of power caused all of this? Inner demons, do you know the answer? He could not help but ask. When I was trapped, the tree of life was still alive and well. How could I know? Tang Zheng was a little disappointed and did not ask any more questions. If the tree of life takes action, then it won't be my turn. The five-clawed golden dragon said happily. Tang Zheng was too lazy to pay attention to the five-clawed golden dragon. He stared intently at Qiyu and the Shura. He did not know what these two were going to do. Qiyu fiercely glared at the Shura, then unwillingly looked at the tree of life. The green branches stood tall, facing Qiyu. It was as if the two of them were looking at each other, their invisible auras clashing. Fine, since the tree of life intervened, then I will let you go. In the end, Qiyu helplessly said. The Shura did not answer him. The murderous intent in his eyes was still burning. It seemed that he still wanted to fight with Qiyu for 300 rounds. He must decide the victor. Qiyu saw through the Shura's thoughts and jokingly said, with the tree of life intervening, you can't fight even if you want to. Rest assured, next time I will definitely decide the victor between us. At that time, it will be the time of your death. The Shura coldly snorted, silently rebuking Qiyu. Qiyu then turned to Tang Zheng. He meaningfully said, Tang Zheng, you and I are both celestials, and I have also been residing in your body for a period of time. This can also be considered fate. Today, I have taken away a portion of the Heaven-Earth Xian stone, so you will not be able to reconstruct the stairway to heaven. So I will let you go first. It can be considered ending our past fate. You should look forward to seeing me a bit later, because then you will be able to live a bit longer. Tang Zheng had not thought that Qiyu would give up so easily. He had not expected the tree of life's interference to be so strong. In the face of Qiyu's threat, Tang Zheng was not the slightest bit afraid. He only regretted that he had come specifically for the Heaven-Earth Xian stone, but in the end he had not succeeded. He had allowed Qiyu to successfully take away a portion of the Heaven-Earth Xian stone. As long as he was missing a piece of Heaven-Earth Xian stone, he would not be able to reconstruct the stairway to heaven. This was equivalent to his hopes of reconstructing the stairway to heaven being destroyed. He felt very regretful, but there was nothing he could do. He could only glare hatefully at Qiyu. Qiyu was indifferent. He looked deeply at the tree of life and said, You actually helped this stinking brat. I will let you understand that your choice was completely wrong. Everyone looked at the tree of life in astonishment. They did not know what Qiyu meant by choice. Why did it choose Tang Zheng? Could it be that it was to protect him? Qiyu did not explain clearly, so they could not ask further. The branches flickered with a green light and swayed with the wind, as if they were silently refuting Qiyu. Qiyu understood the tree of life's meaning. His expression became even more unfriendly as he said, Tang Zheng, you better hide well. In this world, not only me, but those old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor will also not let you go. Those golden crow from before, were you the one who shot it down, right? Tang Zheng's heart skipped a beat. Qiyu did not see it with his own eyes, but he could also guess this point. However, Qiyu's words caused Tang Zheng's heart to sink. He was right. Whether it was Qiyu or the old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor, they would all see him as a thorn in their side. Just how did he get along? How did he offend these two people who were like fire and water at the same time? If he had the chance to go back on his word, would he still do this? He pondered for a moment and gave a negative answer. Chapter 1171. Qiyu flicked his sleeves and left, taking all the demons with him. Tang Zheng didn't stop him. It was impossible to completely keep them here, so there was no need to continue to tangle with them. The Shura looked deeply at Qiyu and frowned, but he didn't jump out. The Shura wasn't like before, who only knew how to kill. He now had a trace of intelligence and understood that it would be extremely difficult for him to get rid of Qiyu. Watching the demons leave, the atmosphere was heavy. Tang Zheng said in a deep voice, "The next time we meet, it will be either you die or I die." Tian Chanzi let out a long sigh of relief and said without any surprise, "Qi was right about one thing. Right now, you are surrounded by enemies and are making enemies everywhere. This isn't a good thing for you." Tang Zheng smiled coldly and said unconcernedly, "So what? Although this wasn't my original intention, I don't regret it in the slightest." Tian Chanzi stared at Tang Zheng and understood his intentions. He nodded heavily and didn't say anything else. Suddenly, Tian Chanzi's gaze turned and fell on the Shura. Shua. The Shura's gaze quickly met with Tian Chanzi's. When their eyes met, it seemed as if there were invisible sparks flying. "What about him?" Tian Chanzi asked curiously. Tang Zheng also subconsciously looked at Qi Yu and said, "The Shura is completely different from before. Something must have happened that no one knows about." Tian Chanzi nodded in agreement. The Shura looked at Tang Zheng with a complicated expression. He coldly snorted and turned to leave. "Stop!" Tang Zheng hurriedly shouted to stop him. Although the Shura had intelligence, he was still a great killing machine, especially to ordinary people. He was a huge threat. If he was allowed to leave openly, it would definitely lead to chaos and many innocent people would die at his hands. Tang Zheng naturally wouldn't sit idly by. Moreover, the Shura was given to him by the Dizong of Goguryeo. If he watched the Shura leave, how would he explain it to the Dizong of Goguryeo? Shura stopped, turned his head, and stared at Tang Zheng with an unfriendly expression. Azura's face couldn't be considered handsome to begin with. In fact, it was even somewhat sinister. Therefore, when he glared at Tang Zheng with his large eyes, it was especially frightening. Tang Zheng faced the Azura without the slightest bit of fear, nor did he have any intention of retreating. "You want to stop me?" Azura coldly asked. "Yes. I can't let you leave," Tang Zheng said truthfully. "You have already left. None of you are my match. What ability do you have to keep me here?" Azura asked disdainfully. The Shura's language ability had improved a lot compared to before. He actually didn't stutter when speaking, which made Tang Zheng's mood even more heavy. Obviously, the Shura's rapid evolution was not necessarily a good thing. "I could suppress you in the past. Can't I now?" Tang Zheng could still feel the strong yin qi and killing intent on the Shura's body, so he was still very confident in the Ksitigarbha Sutra. That was why he was so fearless. The Shura's expression suddenly changed. It was as sinister as a ghost's head. The Shura blade suddenly lit up with a resplendent light. The blade soul also flew out and circled around the Shura blade, emitting a terrifying and evil power. "I don't remember what happened in the past, but if you dare to go against me now, I will definitely make you regret it." The Shura's feelings towards Tang Zheng were very complicated. There was an instinctive reverence that seemed to be deep in his bones, and could not be removed. However, it was obvious that the opponent's strength was not high. Therefore, the Shura did not know where Tang Zheng's confidence came from. As for the words of suppression, the Shura was even more confused. After the Shura's intelligence increased, he could not remember the past. Therefore, he had no impression of the Ksitigarbha Sutra or Tang Zheng. Although the Shura was full of confidence, Tang Zheng did not shrink back. Instead, he took a step forward and looked at the Shura with a burning gaze. "Then you can try." Shua. The Shura did not say another word. He slashed his blade towards Tang Zheng's neck. This slash was strong enough to split stone. If it hit, then Tang Zheng would definitely die. There was no way to save the situation. Tian Chanzi's strength was lower than the Shura's, so when he saw this sudden slash, he was so scared that his whole body trembled. He tried to stop it, but it was too late. He could only see the terrifying blade light slash towards Tang Zheng. "Dodge!" Tian Chanzi screamed to remind him. Tang Zheng did not move. Perhaps he was confused, but he opened his mouth and a golden Sanskrit character flew out from his mouth. A quiet and peaceful power was emitted from the Sanskrit character. This was the first time Tian Chanzi had seen the effect of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. His whole body trembled as he stared at the Sanskrit character. With his cultivation and experience, he could naturally see that the golden Sanskrit character was extraordinary. It was no wonder that it could suppress the Shura. However, Tianqianzi and Tangzheng had the same worry. That was, would the golden Sanskrit character still work? The answer was immediately revealed. Golden Sanskrit characters flew out from Tangzheng's mouth and flew in front of the Shura. Then, like a giant net, they covered the Shura from head to toe. The Shura grimaced and stared fiercely at Tangzheng. He shouted, "What kind of magic is this?" "The Ksitigarbha Sutra," Tangzheng said decisively. He was surprised that the Shura's memory was blank. He didn't even know the Ksitigarbha Sutra. There's nothing strange about this. The Shura's condition will cause him to forget his past memories. In the past, his intelligence didn't increase. He's like a baby. When he grows up, he won't be able to remember clearly. The inner demon suddenly said. Tangzheng was slightly stunned. Then he understood. So that's how it is. Then there's nothing to worry about. No wonder the Shura was so fearless. It seems that he didn't know the Ksitigarbha Sutra's restraining effect on him. Then let him have a taste of it. What is the Ksitigarbha Sutra? The Shura didn't know the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Tangzheng sneered. His confidence increased. He said, "You'll know once you try." Tangzheng immediately chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra. In an instant, more and more golden Sanskrit characters appeared. They completely covered the Shura's body like a layer of golden clothing. Ho ho ho! The Shura clearly felt the danger. He started to make a big fuss. His face became more and more sinister. His body moved chaotically as he tried to break free from the Ksitigarbha Sutra's attack. How could Tangzheng let him do as he wished? He quickly activated the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Golden light shined and dyed the surroundings gold. Even the branches and leaves of the Tree of Life were not spared. The Shura continuously waved the War Spirit Sword in his hand. The War Spirit Sword's power opened up a few cracks on the ground. They were so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. Waves of cold air seeped out from the cracks. Tangzheng ignored it. He activated the Ksitigarbha Sutra without any distracting thoughts. The Shura's struggle became weaker and weaker. Putong! The Shura's legs went soft and he knelt on the ground. His sinister face had an additional trace of reverence. He quickly shook his head. Stop chanting. Stop chanting. Tangzheng finally stopped. He looked at the Shura cautiously and said, "Now you know the power of the Ksitigarbha Sutra?" The Shura hurriedly nodded his head. He no longer had the confidence and arrogance from before. He subconsciously understood where the reverence he had for Tangzheng came from. It was definitely the Ksitigarbha Sutra. It was just that he didn't remember the past. Naturally, he didn't know the origin of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. He subconsciously thought that it was a sacred art created by Tangzheng. Immediately, he became even more reverent towards Tangzheng. To be able to create a technique to suppress him, this was definitely not simple. The way he looked at Tangzheng changed. Many emotions intertwined together. If you listen to me obediently, I won't use the Ksitigarbha Sutra to suppress you. Tangzheng said. The Shura was about to compromise when he discovered that a light flashed in his mind. A new area in his brain was opened up. He felt that his intelligence had clearly increased. Huh? The Shura's eyes widened in surprise. With his not-so-high intelligence, he began to think. Why did his brain suddenly change? Could it be the Ksitigarbha Sutra? He couldn't figure it out no matter how much he thought about it. Suddenly an idea came to him. His expression became fierce and arrogant. He fiercely glared at Tangzheng and said, "I won't listen to you. I, the Shura, am indomitable. How could I listen to you?" Tangzheng frowned. He originally thought that the Shura would calm down a bit after suffering. He didn't expect him to be so arrogant. Then he couldn't be blamed for being ruthless. The Shura was born from the evil yin qi of the 9 layers of hell. He had a violent personality. Tangzheng naturally wouldn't show him any mercy. Therefore, with a thought, he immediately chanted the Ksitigarbha Sutra. The golden Sanskrit words blurted out and enveloped the Shura. The Shura screamed. It was extremely terrifying. However, there was a glimmer of light in the depths of his eyes. This was because he felt the changes in his brain. His brain was being developed bit by bit. He guessed right. Although the Ksitigarbha Sutra caused him great pain, it was also extremely beneficial to him. It could actually develop his brain and make him smarter and smarter. He was overjoyed and unconsciously revealed it. Tang Zheng was as thin as a strand of hair. He immediately discovered the Shura's abnormality. Logically speaking, the Shura should be in great pain. However, at this moment, there was a trace of craftiness in his eyes. There was definitely something fishy going on. Seeing Tang Zheng stop chanting the Ksitigarbha Sutra, the Shura was greatly disappointed. His face twisted. He then provoked. "Is that all you've got? It's only a sizz." Tang Zheng didn't immediately fall for it. He looked at the Shura curiously and asked, "Could it be that you're really not afraid of pain? This bit of pain is only scratching an itch." The Shura snorted. Tang Zheng, however, didn't think much of it and said, "Your ability to lie isn't that great." A trace of panic flashed through the Shura's eyes. This was caught by Tang Zheng. This caused him to become suspicious. His face was ashen as he asked, "Shura, what are you hiding?" The Shura didn't say a word. It was as if he believed that if he didn't speak, there wouldn't be any loopholes. His brain was developed and his intelligence increased. However, he was still too simple. He couldn't be compared to Tang Zheng. Therefore, this childlike reaction exposed him even more. Not only Tang Zheng, but even Tian Chanzi also realized that something was fishy. He stared straight at the Shura and said thoughtfully, "He seems to be deliberately provoking you." Tang Zheng nodded. He also had this feeling. However, what was the Shura's purpose in provoking him? The Ksitigarbha Sutra. Chapter 1172. Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi both thought of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. This was because Shura had been trying to provoke Tang Zheng into reciting the Ksitigarbha Sutra. This abnormal behavior was too eye-catching. Plus or minus pinnacle novel. "Why do you want me to recite the Ksitigarbha Sutra?" Tang Zheng's expression was stern as he asked Azura. Logically speaking, the Azura should be afraid of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. After all, the Ksitigarbha Sutra could suppress him and bring him pain. But he had deliberately provoked him repeatedly. This was too unexpected. Shura panicked as if he had been exposed. He hurriedly said perfunctorily, "What are you talking about? I don't understand." "Hehe, you actually know how to deny it. Your IQ is increasing very quickly," Tian Chanzi said jokingly. "IQ?" Tang Zheng's head twitched as an idea flashed through his mind. The fact that the Azura had gained intelligence was already very strange. Could it be related to the Ksitigarbha Sutra? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this was a possibility. The Ksitigarbha Sutra was extraordinary. Perhaps it really did have the effect of opening one's wisdom. Otherwise, why would the Azura spend so much effort to provoke him? Tang Zheng's expression turned serious. He stared at the Azura and asked, "Azura, did you gain intelligence because of the Ksitigarbha Sutra?" Shura's eyes flashed with panic. He looked around and said with a red face, "Nonsense." Seeing the Azura's reaction, Tang Zheng was able to confirm his own guess, his eyes becoming deep and profound as he swept his gaze over the Azura and said, "Azura, your words have revealed your true heart. It seems like my guess was not wrong. The Ksitigarbha Sutra has indeed opened up your wisdom." Back then, Dizong of Goguryeo did not mention this, which means that this might be an unexpected surprise. A few images flashed through Shura's mind. It was the image of Dizong of Goguryeo suppressing him. It was deeply etched in his mind. Even though his consciousness was muddled in the past, he could not completely forget it now that he had gained intelligence. Dizong of Goguryeo. Shura's eyes flashed with hatred. Gritting his teeth, he could not wait to challenge Dizong of Goguryeo to a duel. "Do you still want to provoke Dizong of Goguryeo? With your strength, you're not his match at all," Tang Zheng said mercilessly. "Nonsense, I will definitely defeat him." Shura subconsciously understood how powerful Dizong of Goguryeo was, but he was unwilling to admit it. He roared in exasperation. "The more you shout, the more it shows that you are guilty. There is a huge gap between you and Dizong of Goguryeo. There is no comparison at all." Tang Zheng coldly mocked. "You. I'm going to kill you." The Shura roared and rushed towards Tang Zheng. Although he had unlocked his intelligence, there was a limit to his shrewdness. If there was a disagreement, he would start a fight. Tang Zheng had no choice but to chant the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Shura knelt on the ground with a plop, holding his head with both hands. He was in great pain, but his eyes revealed joy. Tang Zheng's head trembled. He understood that this was not the way to go. If he continued to use the Ksitigarbha Sutra to suppress the Shura, it would definitely make him smarter. But if he did not use the Ksitigarbha Sutra, he had no other choice. This was a paradox that caused him to be in a dilemma. Come in. In the end, Tang Zheng still had no other choice. He could only activate Sumeru Heaven and take Shura in. But he continued to chant the Ksitigarbha Sutra to suppress him. Finally, Shura calmed down and became quiet. Tian Chanzi looked at this scene and said worriedly, "Although you have temporarily suppressed Shura, you have no choice but to use the Ksitigarbha Sutra. His intelligence is increasing day by day. In the future you may not be able to suppress him." How could Tang Zheng not know this point? It was just that he had no other choice. He could only bitterly smile. The two looked at each other speechlessly. In the end, Tang Zheng shrugged and said, "Counter soldiers with arms, water with an earth weir. Right now he can't make any big waves. Let's just leave it at that for now." Saying this, he raised his head and looked at the tender green branch in the air. He said thoughtfully, "Chiyu said before that the tree of life chose me. What did that mean?" Tian Chanzi heard this and raised his eyebrows. He also said in surprise, "This is indeed strange. The tree of life took the initiative to attack and beat back Chiyu. This is thought-provoking." Tang Zheng looked at the tree of life in a daze and sighed. "Yes, before we only thought that it could improve the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Now it seems that it is far more than that." Tian Chanzi looked pensive. He muttered to himself for a long time and said, "In my world, there is very little information about the tree of life. There are only a few words left. But everyone knows the importance of the tree of life to this world. As for the whereabouts of the tree of life, almost no one knows." "In that case, you also don't know the meaning of Chiyu's words?" Tang Zheng asked in disappointment. Tian Chanzi smiled bitterly and nodded. "I am not a know-it-all. How can I know everything? But since Chiyu said so, then he must know." Tang Zheng's head moved, and he quickly asked the inner demons, "Do you know the meaning of Chiyu's words?" The inner demons hesitated and said, "Of course I know. This is not some big secret." "Then tell me quickly." The inner demons said embarrassedly, "That sentence means that the tree of life has its own consciousness and opinions. It chose to help you and stand on your side. Do you understand?" Tang Zheng's head was raised and he asked, "You mean the tree of life will choose to stand on my side?" "You can think of it that way." Tang Zheng rolled his eyes and looked up at the tree of life in surprise. He was speechless for a long time. "Tree of life, why did you choose to stand on my side? I am the weaker side," he muttered to himself. It seemed that he was asking the tree of life, but it also seemed like he was asking himself. But he had no way to find the answer. "Because I was born because of you." A voice suddenly sounded in Tang Zheng's mind. "Who is it?" Tang Zheng turned pale with fright and almost jumped up. Looking around, he did not see a third person. "What's going on?" Seeing him turn pale with fright, Heaven Monk quickly asked. Tang Zheng looked at Tian Chanzi in a daze and said embarrassedly, "There is an unfamiliar voice in my mind." "Unfamiliar voice?" Tian Chanzi looked at him suspiciously and listened carefully. But he did not hear a third person's voice. He could not help but look at him in surprise and said, "Could it be that you have been possessed by something?" "You are the one who has been possessed," Tang Zheng said angrily. "It is me." That voice suddenly sounded again. Tang Zheng's heart trembled and his eyes stared blankly. He subconsciously replied, "Who are you?" "The tree of life." "What, the tree of life?" Tang Zheng's eyes flashed as he stared at the swaying branch. It slowly approached Tang Zheng and finally stopped in front of Tang Zheng. Tian Chanzi also heard Tang Zheng's words and stared at the tree of life in disbelief. His eyes were filled with shock. Tang Zheng actually communicated with the tree of life. This was unheard of and unseen. Tian Chanzi suddenly turned his head to look at Tang Zheng, as if he wanted to see some clues from his reaction. But he found that Tang Zheng also had a sluggish expression and was completely at a loss. "Why can you talk to me?" Tang Zheng asked. Because it was your blood that awakened me, the Tree of Life said. My blood? Tang Zheng was startled. His thoughts drifted back to the past. At that time, he had been trapped under the Dragon Group's base. It was completely dark and he had almost died there. But he had coincidentally encountered the Tree of Life seed. The seed had absorbed his blood, and then broke out of the ground. In an instant, it had grown into a towering tree. He had almost forgotten this memory. But after the Tree of Life mentioned it, scenes flashed through his mind like a movie. Because of my blood, you can communicate with me like this? Tang Zheng asked curiously. Yes, I have your blood in my body, so there is no need to speak. We can communicate with each other. As for other people, they can't hear my voice. The Tree of Life explained. Tang Zheng nodded and suddenly understood. He asked, Chi, you said you chose me. Is it also because of this? You and Chi are both celestials, but the difference between the two of you is like heaven and earth. I naturally chose you. Then why didn't you communicate with me before? I've always been growing. Now that my consciousness has finally formed, I can communicate with you freely. Before I couldn't. Patiently explained the Tree of Life. Tang Zheng stared at the Tree of Life. For a moment, all sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. There were thousands of words he wanted to say, but he didn't know where to start. I know you have many questions. Ask away. As long as I know, I'll definitely tell you. The Tree of Life seemed to understand Tang Zheng's thoughts. Tang Zheng naturally had many questions. Hearing this, he was delighted. Seeing Tang Zheng's reaction, Tian Chanzi couldn't hear the Tree of Life's words. He hastily asked, What did the Tree of Life say? I finally understand why I can communicate with it. Back then, the Tree of Life was able to grow because it absorbed my blood. Tang Zheng didn't hide anything. Hearing that, Heaven Monk's eyes gradually lit up, and only after a long while did he sigh. This is your opportunity. If not for your blood, the Tree of Life would not have been able to grow, and there would not have been anything after that. Perhaps this is the will of the heavens, and there is an arrangement in the dark. Will of the heavens. Tang Zheng glanced at the blue sky. He bitterly smiled and shook his head. This was too mysterious. He also didn't understand. It was best to ask the Tree of Life first. Tree of Life, how did you disappear from this world back then? Since you're so powerful, you should have the power to protect yourself, right? Asked Tang Zheng solemnly. The branch nodded, indicating it understood Tang Zheng's question. Then its voice rang out in Tang Zheng's mind. Of course I have the power to protect myself. It's just that the attack I encountered back then was even more powerful. Even if I had the power to protect myself, there was nothing I could do. The Tree of Life said regretfully. In the end, I had to gather all my power and transform it into a seed. I waited for the right time and the right person to break through the soil and grow. What power? Tang Zheng was shocked. He was very curious. In this world, anyone who could make the Tree of Life wither and disappear was definitely not something an ordinary person could do. Chapter 1173. Tian Chanzi. Tang Zheng saw this scene and roared, struggling with all his might. Pinnacle novels. He's not dead. The Tree of Life said. I just don't want another noisy person. Tang Zheng heaved a sigh of relief, and found that Tian Chanzi was indeed still breathing. He stared fiercely at the Tree of Life and asked, We've worked so hard to protect you and even set up the Great Eight Desolation Formation to ensure your safety, but you treat us like this. Is this how you distinguish between kindness and hatred? The branch drooped down slightly as if it was ashamed, but it quickly raised its head and said, Of course I distinguish between kindness and hatred. You protected me, so I am naturally grateful to you. But you went against me, so how could I turn a blind eye? Then what do you want? Kill me? Tang Zheng asked with a sneer. Kill. The Tree of Life's voice was full of doubt. After hesitating for a moment, it denied. Of course I won't kill you. I was born because of you. If I kill you, then wouldn't I be worse than those bad guys in the ghost realm? Tang Zheng's head twitched. From the looks of it, the Tree of Life abhorred evil, but its intentions were not bad. Its obsession with the world of spirits and souls was due to its experience in the past. In fact, it was still kind at the bottom of its heart. At least, it had no real malice towards Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng had an idea and advised, "In that case, you are also a kind-hearted person. How can you bear to watch the ghost realm disappear completely? Wouldn't those innocent people of the ghost realm have suffered great injustice because of you?" The Tree of Life was at a loss for words. Seeing this, Tang Zheng struck while the iron was hot and said, "Promise me, let this world stop after it becomes a big world. Let the two worlds depend on each other. Wouldn't that be perfect?" The Tree of Life's breathing quickened again. Suddenly, Tang Zheng felt his entire body loosen. The Tree of Life actually let go of him. The branches rose up high, looking down at Tang Zheng condescendingly and said, "Without you, I can still find a way, the energy of the ghost realm. Come to me." As soon as he finished speaking, a rumbling sound came from the sky. Tang Zheng's head trembled. He had a strange feeling. He quickly looked up at the sky. Above the 9 heavens in the firmament, a black shadow gradually appeared. Not long after, a large hole appeared. A powerful energy was pouring down from the hole like the water of the 9 heavens, surging and surging, causing people to be unable to breathe. Tang Zheng stared at this scene with his mouth agape. The energy that descended from the sky made him feel a sense of fear, because this energy could almost crush him. It was powerful beyond imagination. What is going on? He muttered to himself in a trembling voice. Tian Chanzi had fainted and could not answer his question. The Tree of Life also remained silent and didn't answer. The green slip of paper soared into the sky like a giant sword piercing through the firmament. In an instant, it reached the 9 heavens. At the same time, many people all over the world felt something strange and looked up at the sky. Many people who were far away could not see the strange phenomenon in the sky. However, many powerhouses sensed something from afar. Qiyu and the others did not retreat too far. At the edge of the desert, they could clearly see this scene. Everyone stopped. The elites of the Devil clan were stunned and at a loss. Saint King retracted his gaze and looked at Qiyu with a burning gaze. He asked, "Ancestor, what is going on?" Qiyu sighed meaningfully. "This day has finally come." "What do you mean?" "This world will completely bid farewell to the small world." Tang Zheng's plan back then was successful. He used the Tree of Life to absorb the energy of the world of spirits and souls, and completely turned this world into a big world, thus avoiding destruction. Qiyu said in a deep voice. "What, it was promoted to a big world?" Saint King was shocked. This was something he had heard of in bits and pieces, but he had never seen it with his own eyes. Now looking at the scene in the sky, a very shocking feeling hit him in the face, causing him to be at a loss for a moment. Qiyu sighed faintly. "Yes, it was promoted to a big world. I have to say, I still admire Tang Zheng for this. Although he is our enemy, he is also a person who cannot be underestimated. He is not worth mentioning compared to you, ancestor," Saint King said flatteringly. Qiyu raised the corner of his mouth. It was a faint smile, but he did not comment. If the world of spirits and souls is completely reduced to a small world, will they be willing? Won't the world of spirits and souls start a war with our world? Saint King asked in horror. So this is why Tang Zheng is so extraordinary. He has already obtained the consent of the world of spirits and souls. All this will happen naturally, and will not cause the problem you are worried about. Do you understand? Qiyu said meaningfully. How is this possible? The world of spirits and souls is not a softie. Why would they let it happen? Saint King was incredulous. He felt that this was simply nonsense. Looking at his doubtful eyes, Qiyu snorted coldly. He was too lazy to explain more, and looked at the sky intently. On Mount Everest, a group of people was searching for the soul of the golden crow scattered everywhere. Suddenly, one of them raised his head and looked into the distance. Then another person also raised his head and looked into the distance. Suddenly, everyone stopped what they were doing and stopped to look into the distance. They looked at each other, and their expressions became complicated. "What is going on?" Lu Wuxin asked in a deep voice. Many people shook their heads because they knew. Emosia's eyes were deep and unfathomable. He stared into the distance. It was too far away. Even if his cultivation was superb, he could not see, but he could feel the aura. The terrible energy that could almost destroy the world fell from the sky, causing his heart to sink to the bottom. There seems to be energy from the outside world entering this world. Emosia said thoughtfully. Energy from the outside world entering? Lu Wuxin's eyes widened in surprise, not understanding what this sentence meant. They did not know that Tang Zheng used the Tree of Life to absorb the energy of the world of spirits and souls. Otherwise, they would have guessed this point. What should we do? Lu Wuxin asked helplessly. The two of them were speechless and could not figure out the reason. Since their reunion, Emosia's leadership position had gradually been established. Although Lu Wuxin was very strong and arrogant, she had to admit that she was still not comparable to Emosia. I'll go take a look, Emosia said, eager to move. Lu Wuxin wanted to say that he would go as well, but he swallowed his words. Collecting the souls of the golden crows was the most important thing, and they could not afford to waste any time, because the enemy was in full swing, and they did not have much time left. Okay, then I'll stay. You must be careful, Lu Wuxin reminded. Emosia nodded and soared into the sky. Like a gust of wind, she blew into the distant sky. At the same time, the animals between heaven and earth became anxious. In the zoo, the roars of many animals sounded. The monkeys on the rockery jumped up and down, becoming irritable and restless. The tiger in the cage kept scratching the iron dragon with its claws. It opened its bloody mouth and roared at the tourists, scaring them into screaming and retreating. The python stood up high, spitting out its scarlet tongue. Its pair of eyes emitted a terrifying gaze. Screams were heard everywhere in the zoo. Not only these animals, but almost all the people and animals seemed to have gone crazy, trying to break out of the cage. The tourists fled in panic. In the streets and alleys, there was a rustling sound from the sewers. After a while, huge rats crawled out one by one. They did not seem to be afraid of humans at all. They crawled quickly on the streets with panic in their eyes. The pedestrians were frightened and screamed, jumping up and down. A series of strange scenes played out in China, attracting the attention of many people and causing a lot of panic. In a secret military base in the western suburbs of the capital, Ji Wuxiang was training soldiers and practicing celestial chess. During this period, he had made rapid progress. Soldiers were indeed the best people. They followed orders meticulously, allowing him to make rapid progress. He believed that it would not be long before he could complete celestial chess. At that time, not only would the capital be covered by celestial chess, but the vast world and the vast land of China would be covered by celestial chess. Then, the plan that he had been planning for a long time would come to fruition. He was going to become an unprecedented person. Thinking of this, he was very excited. As for the changes in the outside world, he had heard a little about it, but he chose to ignore it for the time being. Although Qi was resurrected, the Yellow Emperor's former subordinates rose, and the ancient figures in myths and legends reappeared in the world. He believed that as long as he completed celestial chess, these ancient people would not be able to make big waves. He had absolute confidence in his celestial chess. Without any warning, he stopped giving orders, and the tens of thousands of soldiers stopped their movements in unison, looking at him with strange expressions. He raised his head high, frowning as he looked at the distant sky, as if something was firmly attracting him. Granny Li had been following Ji Wuxiang all this time. After noticing his strange behavior, she also frowned and thoughtfully asked, "Lord, I seem to have sensed something." Ji Wuxiang's expression was solemn as he nodded and said, "Your feeling is correct. There is indeed a powerful energy coming from the northwest. This energy can almost destroy the world, making people feel very uneasy." Energy that can destroy the world? Granny Li was shocked, her face somewhat pale. Ever since the Li Palace changed hands, the people around her had either died or left. Granny Li had long since lost her former prestige, and there was a trace of melancholy between her brows. Ji Wuxiang sighed. "Yes, the strength of this energy is extraordinary. If I'm not wrong, this must be the Tree of Life at work." "What is the Tree of Life doing?" Ji Wuxiang pondered for a while, then said with a myriad of emotions, "It's transforming the world, making it completely advance to a large world." He actually knew what Tang Zheng was doing. It had to be said that he was really too powerful. What is a large world? Although Granny Lee was the commander of the Lee Palace, she still did not know about the large and small worlds. She could not help but look at Ji Wuxiang in confusion. Chapter 1174. Granny Lee looked at Ji Wuxiang in confusion and asked curiously, "Honorable Lord, what do you mean by that? Why was there not much time left for them after the world became a world?" Granny Lee was extremely intelligent, but she couldn't figure out the mystery behind this. Once it becomes a world, the cultivators of this world will absorb enough world energy, and their cultivation speed will become faster and faster. Their strength will also become more and more powerful. The space for us cultivators to live in will be extremely compressed, and that will be our doomsday. Ji Wuxiang said in a deep voice. Granny Lee's face sank as she nervously asked, "Then shouldn't we fight back?" Ji Wuxiang's lips curved into a faint smile as he said, "Of course we have to fight back. How can we just sit there and wait for death?" Granny Lee looked pensive as she stared at the army that was training hard and tentatively asked, "Could it be that the key to our counterattack is the heavenly chess?" Ji Wuxiang looked at Granny Lee with approval as he said, "You guessed right. As my trusted general, you will witness all of this. This is the birth of a new era, an era that truly belongs to us cultivators." Ji Wuxiang's voice was loud and emotional, arousing Granny Lee's emotions. Her blood surged as she looked at Ji Wuxiang with shining eyes. Although the Honorable Lord's true appearance was much younger than she had expected, it still didn't affect his lofty image in her mind. In order to deceive Tang Zheng, Ji Wuxiang not only deceived Granny Lee, but also used her disciple as a sacrifice. This caused Granny Lee to feel resentment in her heart, but later on, this resentment disappeared and she followed Ji Wuxiang wholeheartedly. Now that Ji Wuxiang had painted a big pie for her, her confidence in Ji Wuxiang increased. She believed that what was lost would be regained. The glory of the Azure Dragon Hall would once again appear in this world, and those who had sacrificed themselves would be remembered forever. In the northwest desert, sand and stones flew everywhere as a strong wind blew, dancing around the tree of life as it soared upwards, as if it wanted to break through the horizon. Above the 9 heavens, the black hole grew bigger and bigger, emitting a terrifying energy. Tang Zheng raised his head and stared at this scene in a daze. His eyes flashed and he finally guessed what was going on. He muttered to himself, "Such a powerful injection of energy. This is the tree of life absorbing a huge amount of energy from the world of spirits and souls. This world will be upgraded." For a moment, all sorts of feelings welled up in his heart, because this was the result he had dreamt of and fought for with great difficulty. He had once fantasized about the arrival of this day, and even hoped that it would come as soon as possible. But now that he had truly seen this scene, he had a kind of melancholy. Was what he had done right or wrong? The Tree of Life's obsession was so strong that it would continue to absorb the energy of the world of spirits and souls. Although without his cooperation for the time being, the Tree of Life would not be able to completely absorb the energy of the world of spirits and wipe out the world of spirits and souls. However, there was no guarantee that the Tree of Life would not find other alternatives in the future. The world of spirits and souls was in danger. At this moment of life and death, how could the world of spirits and souls continue to sit idly by and keep Dizong of Goguryu's promise? At that time, the war between the two worlds would be inevitable. No matter who won or lost, it was not the scene he wanted to see. No matter who it was, they would pay a painful price. At this point, his face gradually became gloomy. He stared at this scene, but there was no way to stop it. The energy transmitted from the black hole was too huge. Except for the Tree of Life's ability to absorb it, whether it was him or the Empyrean Fairy, he was afraid that there was no way to interfere. Otherwise, they would be in danger of dying. A gust of wind blew in this oasis in the desert, and a tornado blew outside the desert, bringing up sand and dust all over the sky. 9 tornadoes formed by sand and dust wandered around the periphery of this oasis, and even the air seemed to be sucked away by the tornadoes. Cough cough. A burst of violent coughing sounded. Tian Chanzi climbed up from the ground, rubbed his eyes, and looked at all this in a daze. When he saw the raging tornadoes around him, he was shocked and shouted, "What's going on?" Before he could finish his words, as if someone had grabbed his throat, He suddenly raised his head and stared straight at the sky. This was because he had strongly felt the terrifying energy coming from the sky. His pupils rapidly dilated, and he opened his mouth wide. After a long while he shouted, "Promotion! This world is finally going to be promoted!" He was ecstatic. This was something he had dreamed of. Bang, bang, bang. He actually jumped up and down on the spot, like a lively child who had completed his biggest wish. His eyes were blazing as he looked at the sky, and his eyes were filled with tears. His lips trembled as he said, "This day has finally come. The glory of the cultivators will see the light of day again." He took a deep breath and sighed comfortably. This is the smell. What an abundant spiritual energy of heaven and earth. 1,000 years ago, this world was still a great world. When he was reborn, he found that the world had become extremely strange. Not only was the environment strange, but it was also a kind of feeling, a kind of perception that a cultivator had towards the world. At this moment, he gradually felt a sense of familiarity, and this world was gradually overlapping with the world in his memory. Tang Zheng stared blankly at Tian Chanzi, who was like a completely different person. The other's reaction was far beyond his expectations. Tian Chanzi calmed down after a long time, and realized that he had lost his composure. He turned his head and saw Tang Zheng's blank expression, and bitterly smiled. "I lost my composure, mainly because I was too excited." Tang Zheng didn't understand and asked, "Do you also want to be promoted to a great world?" "Of course. Don't you want to be promoted?" Tian Chanzi asked back. Tang Zheng fell into silence, pondered for a while, and asked, "Do you know why I had a falling out with the Tree of Life?" "I was just about to ask you this question." Tian Chanzi looked at Tang Zheng curiously. "Didn't it choose to help you? Why did you turn against each other in the blink of an eye?" Tang Zheng decided not to hide, and truthfully said, "Because it wanted to destroy the world of ghosts, and I didn't agree. So naturally I became its enemy." Tian Chanzi rolled his eyes, looked suspiciously at Tang Zheng and asked, "Why didn't you agree? A world was destroyed just like that. What's the difference between us and the devil race, or the 100 changing Star Lord? They used the whole island nation as the price to summon back the devil race. Do you agree with this move?" Tang Zheng asked. Tian Chanzi was silent. He understood Tang Zheng's thoughts and said, "You are a person with great love. You can't bear to see the world of ghosts fall into destruction. But have you ever thought about what they did to our world in the past?" Tang Zheng nodded. "Of course I know. Although they absorbed our energy and promoted to a great world, they didn't completely destroy this world. They still left a glimmer of hope, right? But they put us in danger of being destroyed. It's not like you don't know that small worlds are in danger of being destroyed in the long river of history. This is an eternal truth." Heaven Monk retorted. "Of course I understand. If it's for revenge, we can just let the ghost realm be reduced to a small world and ignore it, just like what they did to us back then. Otherwise, a war will break out between the two realms, and at that time, the ones who will suffer will be the people of Dawn." Tang Zheng's emotions became agitated, and he talked nonstop. Tian Chanzi stared at him intently, his expression changing. Finally, he sighed and said, "You won. You convinced me. A war between the two worlds is not good for anyone. If the world of ghosts agrees with the current situation and no longer causes trouble, then we really don't need to kill them, otherwise we are not righteous." Tang Zheng was overjoyed. He looked at Tian Chanzi happily and said, "I really didn't misjudge you. I guessed you would agree." Tian Chanzi smiled bitterly. "You brat, you're sure to win." Tang Zheng shook his head. "Because I know you are a good person." "A good person?" Tian Chanzi was stunned for a moment, and then laughed out loud. "Ha ha ha, in life, who hasn't done a few things against their heart, and who can be called a good person? You are still too naive." Tang Zheng did not comment. Rumble. A loud noise came from the sky, interrupting the conversation between the two. The black hole in the sky was getting bigger and bigger, as if a big hole had been broken in the sky. An energy poured down, completely pouring into the Tree of Life. Green light soared into the sky, like a giant umbrella, covering this part of the world. Even the raging tornado was dyed with a layer of green. Suddenly, a phantom image appeared in the black hole. In the phantom image, There were rows upon rows of buildings that looked like ancient city walls. However, even though it was so far away, it still gave off a cold and gloomy feeling. What is this? Tian Chanzi exclaimed. Tang Zheng's pupils shrank and said, "This is the image of the world of ghosts. Those are the cities of the world of ghosts." The shadow was like a flickering light, and one city after another appeared. In the world of ghosts, the 10 kings of hell had 10 huge cities, and Tang Zheng even vaguely recognized a few of them. Tian Chanzi, however, saw the scene for the first time, and said with emotion, "It is really not much different from our world, just like our ancient times." Tang Zheng nodded in agreement. That's right. That's why there are tens of thousands of ghost citizens in the ghost realm. These people are just like the common people in our world. How can we just watch them suffer an undeserved disaster and completely disappear? Tian Chanzi suddenly understood Tang Zheng's state of mind. Perhaps only after going to the world of ghosts would he have such thoughts, such a kind heart. These phantoms gradually became blurry. Ripples appeared in the sky, spreading out in circles. "Look, there are people." Tian Chanzi suddenly pointed at the black hole and shouted. In the black hole, after the shadows disappeared, there were many more figures, pacing back and forth in the black hole, looking down at the vast desert and the tree of life. Tang Zheng recognized one of them at a glance, and exclaimed, "Dizong of Goguryeo." Among those figures, the most conspicuous one was Dizong of Goguryeo, who stood at the forefront without sadness or joy. Although there was such a long distance between them, they could still feel the peaceful aura that came from his heart. It was as if with just a glance, one's state of mind would calm down, and even the stormy waves would cease. When Tian Chanzi heard the 3 words Dizong of Goguryeo, he was shocked, and stared at the sky, searching for a target, and asked curiously, "Who is Dizong of Goguryeo?" "The one in your heart," Tang Zheng replied mysteriously. However, the heaven monk immediately locked onto the Kittigarbha Bodhisattva. He did not suspect anything at all, and just stared at the Kittigarbha Bodhisattva from a distance. Chapter 1175. Tian Chanzi smacked his lips and said, "So he is the Dizong of Goguryeo." From a distance, he couldn't see the specific appearance of the Dizong of Goguryeo, but he could feel his unique aura, and this aura was firmly imprinted in the depths of his heart, and he would never forget it for the rest of his life. What about the others? They are the 10 kings of hell. The 10 kings of hell have ruled the ghost realm for thousands of years. Tian Chanzi's gaze turned cold, and he turned to the others, and naturally felt a different aura from them. He increasingly agreed with Tang Zheng's decision. These kings of hell were not ordinary people, and if the 2 worlds were to go to war, it was really unknown who would win and who would lose. In particular, Dizong of Goguryeo's cultivation couldn't be seen through at all. If he were to make a move, it would be earth-shattering, and he couldn't predict how serious the consequences would be. Tian Chanzi looked deeply at Tang Zheng, and said, "The ghost realm is powerful. No wonder they could use the 9 nether lightning to kill the tree of life and be promoted to a big world. This is the strength they have accumulated for countless years. Now, although they have been demoted, their strength is still there, and at this moment, it is really not a wise move to be their enemy." Seeing that Tian Chanzi finally figured it out, Tang Zheng smiled with relief. In fact, humans don't know that they have walked on the edge of life and death, and they should thank you. If you hadn't won the trust of the Dizong of Goguryeo, the 2 worlds would have gone to war, and the people would have been in a terrible situation, and I don't know how many humans would have lost their lives. Yan Qingyi has always said that you are the savior, and although she later said that her prophecy was wrong, I don't think her prophecy was wrong, and you may really be the savior of this world. Tian Chanzi looked at Tang Zheng with shining eyes, and said unceasingly. Tang Zheng couldn't help laughing, touched his nose and said, "It's not as mysterious as you say, savior. I'm not that great." "Tang Zheng." A melodious voice suddenly came from the sky. Tang Zheng shuddered and quickly looked up. He saw Dizong of Goguryeo walking out of the black hole, and floating in the air. Under the scorching sun, he was completely fine. The other Yama kings were still hiding in the black hole, and none of them had crossed the line. The Dizong of Goguryeo had come to the human world. At noon, with the scorching sun in the sky, the yang qi was the strongest. For the people of the ghost realm, it was the most dangerous time. As long as they were exposed, they would be injured by the yang qi. Of course, with the cultivation of the 10 kings of hell, it was not to the extent that their souls would be completely scattered after being exposed, but they did not want to be hurt. Dizong of Goguryeo was not worried about this at all. When he crossed the line and came to the human world, he was exposed to the scorching sun. The blazing yang qi seemed to be about to penetrate his body. Suddenly, a golden light bloomed from his body, even covering the sun. It was very dazzling. A lotus flower appeared under his feet, quietly carrying him in the air. He was neither sad nor happy. This earth-shattering scene did not seem to cause the slightest ripple in his heart. The leaves of the tree of life rustled and stood up one after another, like pairs of eyes, staring straight at the Dizong of Goguryeo. It also heard the conversation between Tang Zheng and Tian Chanzi, so it understood that this person was the Dizong of Goguryeo, the lord of the ghost realm. It examined the Dizong of Goguryeo, as if it wanted to see whether the other party was strong or weak. Dizong of Goguryeo glanced at the tree of life indifferently, then shouted at Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng rose into the air and responded, Dizong of Goguryeo, I have already done what I promised you. Dizong of Goguryeo said calmly. Tang Zheng nodded heavily. Thank you very much. Without your help, our world would not have been able to be promoted to a big world. Everything has its own destiny. This was taken away from you by the ghost realm in the past, and the ghost realm also suffered the corresponding karma. The 9 underworlds became hell, and countless ghosts became sacrifices. This is the heavenly Tao. Dizong of Goguryeo said mysteriously. Tang Zheng heard the words heavenly Tao again. These 2 words were said by the Dizong of Goguryeo many times, but Tang Zheng knew very little about the heavenly Tao. This was a mysterious thing, and with his current cultivation he could not understand it. Dizong of Goguryeo would not explain it to him, so he chose to ignore this point for the time being. From now on, the ghost realm and the human world do not owe each other anything. I hope that you will take care of yourselves, manage well, and benefit the common people. Only then will my painstaking efforts not be in vain. Dizong of Goguryeo warned. Tang Zheng nodded in agreement. Please rest assured. Dizong of Goguryeo nodded and took a deep look at the tree of life, saying, It has a different idea. I hope you can persuade it. In many things, too much is as bad as too little. Tang Zheng's head moved. Dizong of Goguryeo's cultivation was too terrifying. He could actually see through the tree of life's thoughts. Could it be that he already knew that the tree of life was trying to kill the ghost realm? He can see through me? The tree of life's voice sounded in Tang Zheng's mind. It seemed that it was also very shocked by Dizong of Goguryeo's actions. The tree of life could not communicate with the outside world. It could only communicate with Tang Zheng through divine sense. However, Dizong of Goguryeo's voice suddenly responded to the tree of life in Tang Zheng's mind. There is nothing in the world that cannot be seen through. As long as you uphold your original heart, a pair of eyes can see through everything. This change caused the tree of life to be at a loss for a moment. It did not know how to respond. Tang Zheng had seen the various magical powers of Dizong of Goguryeo, so he was not too surprised. Instead, he was secretly delighted. There was no doubt that Dizong of Goguryeo was intimidating the tree of life, so that it would not act rashly and have any evil thoughts. Otherwise, Dizong of Goguryeo would definitely not sit idly by. The tree of life also understood this meaning. For a moment, it did not know what to think. In any case, it fell into silence. Dizong of Goguryeo achieved his goal and turned to leave. Tang Zheng finally met with Dizong of Goguryeo and hurriedly called out, Dizong of Goguryeo, I still have a question to ask. What question? Azura has intelligence. Do you know what happened? Only Dizong of Goguryeo could give him an answer to this question. Intelligence? Dizong of Goguryeo was slightly stunned. He turned around and looked at Tang Zheng curiously. Yes, we suspect that he gained intelligence after being suppressed by the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Does the Ksitigarbha Sutra have such an effect? Tang Zheng stared at Dizong of Goguryeo with a burning gaze. The Ksitigarbha Sutra was created by Dizong of Goguryeo, so he should be the most clear about its effects. Dizong of Goguryeo pondered for a moment and said, "The Ksitigarbha Sutra was created by me comprehending the heavenly Tao. As for its mysteries, I do not know all of them." "What? You do not know all of the mysteries of the Ksitigarbha Sutra?" Tangjung was shocked. The creator did not fully understand the mysteries of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Just how magical was this set of Ksitigarbha Sutra? For a moment, Tangjung's heart was filled with mixed feelings. Yes, when I passed on the Ksitigarbha Sutra to you, I also hoped that you would be able to understand the mysteries within. Now it seems that my actions at that time were wise. If not for you, perhaps I would not have known that the Ksitigarbha Sutra could unlock the Shura's intelligence. The corners of Dizong of Goguryeo's mouth slightly curved up in joy. However, the Shura's nature is cruel. After gaining intelligence, he will definitely not be an ordinary person. His killing intent will not weaken. You must chant the Ksitigarbha Sutra day and night to suppress the Shura and purify his soul. In the end, you must save the Shura and not let him harm the common people. This is the true effect of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. It is a great merit. Do you understand? Dizong of Goguryeo earnestly advised. Tangjung looked at Dizong of Goguryeo with slight astonishment and said, "Can I really save the Shura?" "You have compassion in your heart, so naturally you can do all this. If you can save the Shura, you will be a Buddha," Dizong of Goguryeo said meaningfully. Tangjung's head moved. He remembered that Dizong of Goguryeo had once made an oath. "If hell is not empty, I swear that I will not become a Buddha." The moment hell was empty, he became a Buddha and directly broke through to the Mahayana realm. Could it be that if he saved the Shura, it would be equivalent to Dizong of Goguryeo's achievement? Could he become a Buddha and reach the Mahayana realm? Thinking of the Mahayana realm, the waves in his heart became more turbulent. His eyes flickered, unable to hide his emotions. This little thought did not escape Dizong of Goguryeo's eyes. However, he did not clear up Tangjung's doubts. Instead, he said meaningfully, "On the road of life, there are many things that you have to experience on your own. Only then can you have a deeper understanding and greater fortune." Tangjung thought about it, and swallowed the question that was about to come out of his mouth. He said sincerely, "Thank you, Dizong of Goguryeo, for your guidance. The Shura has gained wisdom because of you. If the Shura does evil in the future and causes a situation of suffering and suffering, this karmic karma will be recorded on your head. So you must be careful," Dizong of Goguryeo warned. Tangjung nodded heavily. "I'm leaving." Dizong of Goguryeo turned around again. This time, Tangjung did not ask him to stay. He stared at his back in a daze. When he walked into the black hole, the golden light on his body quickly disappeared, and he merged into the atmosphere created by the other kings of hell. Tangjung could not see the expressions of the kings of hell clearly from afar, but without exception, they did not have good expressions. Their hard work back then was now in vain. No matter who it was, they would not be happy. However, for the sake of his own world, Tangjung would not really be soft-hearted and care about their feelings. Boom! With a loud sound, the black hole suddenly shrank. The last wave of majestic energy fell like a torrential rain. Then, the black hole disappeared, and the sky returned to normal. However, a mighty wave of heaven and earth spirit energy completely burst out from the tree of life, soaring into the sky and spreading in all directions at lightning speed. Whoosh! It was raining. There were no clouds in the sky. It was clear and boundless. However, the rain still fell. This rainwater contained a lot of heaven and earth spirit chi, nourishing every inch of the land. The tornado also subsided and turned back into sand that fell to the ground. After being soaked by the rainwater, a little bit of green appeared in the sand, and tender grass grew out of the sand. Chapter 1176. The rain did not stop at the desert, but spread to the divine continent. Not long after, it began to rain inexplicably in the divine continent. The sky was clear for thousands of miles, but it began to rain. This scene was inconceivable. The farther one was from the tree of life, the weaker the effect of the rain falling on the ground. No more grass grew from the ground, but the plants were nourished by the rain. The grass became greener, and the flowers became more beautiful, quietly changing. In the mountains, many intelligent animals drilled out of their caves, raised their heads, opened their mouths, and swallowed the rain falling from the sky. Their eyes were bright, and their fur became more lustrous. Magical changes were sprouting in their bodies. Tian Chanzi looked at this scene in amazement. The boundless desert had completely turned into an oasis. It was completely different from before, as if it was another world. He could not help but look up at the tree of life and said with emotion, "It's finally advanced to a big world. This is the myriad of phenomena that only a big world can have. All living things are growing, and vitality is flourishing." Tang Zheng could not hide the shock in his eyes. He truly felt the difference of a big world. He took a deep breath, and countless spiritual energy of heaven and earth were sucked into his lungs through his mouth and nose, spreading to his 8 extraordinary meridians. Even the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was seeping into his body through his pores. This was a completely different feeling from before. He was surprised to feel everything that was different. No wonder the ancient cultivators were so powerful. It was not without reason. With such rich spiritual energy of heaven and earth, it was difficult not to increase one's cultivation. He couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement in his heart. Wouldn't his cultivation increase even faster? As soon as this thought appeared, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth seemed to be enlightened. It rushed into his meridians like a river, and his whole body emitted strange sounds. His eyes lit up, and a low roar burst out from the depths of his body and rushed to the sky from his throat. Roar. This roar was not a human's voice, but a dragon's roar. The dragon mark on his glabella blossomed with a bright golden light, and a 6-clawed golden dragon flew out of the dragon mark and danced around Tang Zheng's body. In an instant, pieces of glittering golden scales covered Tang Zheng's body. "What's going on?" Tian Chanzi asked in shock. Tang Zheng hurriedly cast a comforting glance and said, "I'm fine, my dragon god arts is about to break through again." Back then, after Tang Zheng absorbed the mysterious dragon soul in the Langya Pavilion, his dragon god secret art had greatly increased, directly breaking through to the 6th layer. The little golden dragon had also grown 6 dragon claws. Later on, he was delayed by various matters and did not go to Langya Pavilion again. At this moment, seeing that the dragon god secret art was on the verge of breaking through, Huang Xiaolong's heart stirred. Once he broke through to the 7th layer, he would definitely make a trip to the Langya Pavilion to explore the situation, especially that mysterious burial chamber. There were too many tombstones inside, and each tombstone contained a soul. Once he absorbed a dragon soul, his dragon god secret art would easily evolve. Even the 5-clawed golden dragon did not know about this matter. If he knew that Tang Zheng had absorbed a dragon soul, he would definitely categorize him with the hated dragon slayer, which would cause Tang Zheng to fall into a passive position. It was precisely because the 5-clawed golden dragon was very disgusted with absorbing dragon souls, so Tang Zheng subconsciously did not want to rely on this method to increase his cultivation. After all, he had an indissoluble bond with the dragon clan. If he wantonly absorbed the dragon souls of the dead seniors of the dragon clan, it would be disrespectful. Tang Zheng was a principled person. There were things that he should do and things that he should not do. Unintentionally absorbing a dragon soul could be forgiven, but if he deliberately absorbed a dragon soul, it would be too despicable. However, he was still very curious about the burial chamber. After all, even the 5-clawed golden dragon did not know of its existence, so he still wanted to explore it clearly. Perhaps there would be an unexpected harvest. Hearing this, Tian Chanzi breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Then be careful. I will protect you." Tang Zheng nodded his head. His mind and body were immersed in the dragon seal, and a strong dragon chi was continuously being produced from the dragon seal. The spirit chi of heaven and earth continuously rushed into the dragon seal, causing the golden light released by the dragon seal to become more and more intense. The 6-clawed golden dragon that was wrapped around Tang Zheng's body raised its head and wagged its tail, exuding a frightening majesty that made people unable to look directly at it. Roar. The little golden dragon raised its head and let out a dragon roar. Its eyes bloomed with golden light, and a small dragon claw gradually grew from its abdomen. Tian Chanzi looked at this scene curiously, unable to hide the shock in his eyes. For the people of Huaxia, dragons were always a very sacred existence, but at this moment, Tang Zheng was like a dragon, making Tian Chanzi have a whole new level of respect for him. This kid's magic is far beyond my imagination. When I first met him, I never thought that he would have a day like this. TSK, my life is really worth it, to have cultivated such a freak. The word freak was not derogatory, but Tian Chanzi could not find an appropriate adjective to describe Tang Zheng. In the distant sky, Missouri Xie suddenly arrived. Just now he had seen the scene in the sky from afar. The appearance of the Dizong of Goguryeo and the 10 kings of hell made him turn pale with fright. He did not know the existence of the Dizong of Goguryeo, but he vaguely guessed the identity of this group of people. In particular, he found that these kings of hell were not angry and did not fight back, which was greatly beyond his expectations. The tree of life absorbed the energy of the world of spirits and souls, but the 10 kings of hell turned a blind eye to it and did not attack. This did not make sense at all. But soon he saw a person flying into the sky. His pupils shrank as he recognized that this person was Tang Zheng, his opponent. If it were not for Tang Zheng, the soul of the Golden Crow would not have fallen, and he could directly summon the Yellow Emperor. Because the distance was too far, Mo Xie did not hear the conversation between Tang Zheng and the Dizong of Goguryeo, but when he saw the two talking happily, his heart suddenly sank to the bottom. Why was this kid so extraordinary that he even had contact with the world of spirits and souls? The world of spirits and souls did not make a big move. It must be related to Tang Zheng. At this point, Mo Xie was confused again. What ability did he have to be able to persuade the world of spirits and souls? He asked himself honestly, he did not have this ability. Even in ancient times, the Yellow Emperor and the world of spirits and souls lived in peace and did not attack each other. Of course, at that time, the world of spirits and souls was a small world, and it was not strong enough. Therefore, the Yellow Emperor did not pay too much attention to it. But only Mo Xie understood that the world of spirits and souls was not Xiaobai's rabbit, and they would not be trampled on. Especially when it was a matter of the survival of the world of spirits and souls, they would not sit idly by. But after seeing the people from the world of spirits and souls quietly retreat, he had to admit that all this really happened. The world of spirits and souls was demoted, but they did not dare to say anything and just left. This was absolutely not in line with common sense, and it was not in line with the interests of the world of spirits and souls. Mo Xie was resourceful, but he could not figure out the reason behind it even if he scratched his head. Before Mo Xie could recover, he saw the changes in Tang Zheng's body. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets, and he exclaimed in disbelief, "Dragon, this kid actually has a connection with dragons." In ancient times, dragons were already a species that existed, but to them, dragons were still an extremely powerful existence. Mo Xie had seen a dragon with her own eyes before, but dragons were too mysterious. Their heads could only be seen but not their tails. However, they coexisted peacefully with humans and didn't cause any trouble. In addition, the Yellow Emperor was not afraid of the existence of dragons because of the golden crow he raised. The golden crow was not weaker than a dragon, and if a dragon really wanted to be an enemy of the Yellow Emperor, then the golden crow would definitely not let the dragon have an easy time. For Mo Xie, dragons were a mysterious and powerful existence, which made his heart even more turbulent. His eyes gradually blossomed with light as he stared fixedly at Tang Zheng. Even though they were so far away, he could still feel the powerful dragon chi that was transmitted over. It was an aura that could not be provoked, causing his heart to tremble. He clenched his fists, really wanting to rush up and stop Tang Zheng, but when he saw Tian Chanzi next to him, he forcibly suppressed this thought. Tang Zheng is extraordinary. We must be careful in the future. Lu Wuxin is right, perhaps this is also a huge threat. Mo Xie muttered to himself, his gaze involuntarily drifting into the distance. Vaguely he saw many figures. Mo Xie's eyes flashed with killing intent. "Qiyu, you've actually been resurrected. Your war with us did not end in the Battle of Zhuolu, but instead continued to this day. You still want to make a comeback, but we won't give you the chance. Just you wait, when the Yellow Emperor is resurrected, it will be the day of your death." Chiyu's group was too eye-catching. Xie had discovered them despite being far away. Chiyu had changed his appearance, but it was not difficult for Xie. He had also fought Chiyu in the past, so he was very familiar with Chiyu's aura. Even though Chiyu was ever-changing, Xie could recognize his undisguised aura at a glance. Even Chiyu retreated in dejection, which means that things are not going well. He didn't get any benefits here. Tangzheng, you're really not simple. Even Chiyu can't do anything to you. Xie unwillingly focused his gaze on Tangzheng. In the end, Xie let out a long sigh, turned around, and went back to discuss countermeasures with Lu Wuxin and the others. Fortunately, he had come all the way here to discover these secrets. Otherwise, he would have misjudged the situation. The scales on Tangzheng's body became thicker and larger, and the golden light became more and more intense. It was as if he had turned into a dragon. The little golden dragon finally completely grew out its 7th claw. It let out another dragon roar, overjoyed. It shook its head and wagged its tail as it soared into the sky. Wherever it passed, even the air was dyed golden. Even the tree of life was dyed with a layer of golden luster. Tangzheng's eyes sparkled with golden light as he stared straight at the 7-clawed little golden dragon. He stretched out his hand and shouted, "Come back!" The little golden dragon swung its tail, turned around, and swooped down at Tangzheng, charging straight into Tangzheng's dragon seal. In an instant, its body was surrounded by a resplendent golden light as a powerful dragon aura soared into the sky. Roar! A dragon roar burst out of Tangzheng's mouth, forming a powerful shockwave that spread in all directions, causing the leaves to rustle. Chapter 1177. The golden light disappeared, and Tangzheng returned to his original appearance. His heart was as calm as still water, and his previous excitement calmed down. Of course, he understood the reason for all his changes. His cultivation had previously increased to the 2nd level of the divine transformation realm, and now he had absorbed a large amount of spiritual qi of heaven and earth. His dragon god secret art had naturally broken through. Looking at the 7-clawed little golden dragon in the dragon seal, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The 5-clawed golden dragon's voice sounded in his mind, and said in a complicated tone, "You've broken through again. This dragon god secret art seems to be tailor-made for you. You cultivate much faster than us dragons." The 5-clawed golden dragon seemed to be particularly confused about this. "It's all thanks to you for teaching me the dragon god secret art." The 5-clawed golden dragon snorted, feeling unhappy. He was branded by Tangzheng's soul, and that time it also helped him break through the dragon god secret art. Recalling the 7-clawed little golden dragon just now, it thought unhappily, "I've already broken free, and my cultivation is also improving day by day. I believe it won't be long before I can return to my peak state." Perhaps this was the only thing that could make it slightly gratified. "You can go to the 7th floor of Langya Pavilion. You must have been looking forward to this day for a long time," the 5-clawed golden dragon said. Tangzheng smiled and said, "Of course, the Langya Pavilion is so mysterious, and every time I take a step forward, there will be new discoveries. This is a huge temptation to me, and now I can't wait to go in and take a look." His tone changed and he said, "However, it's obviously not the time now. We'll talk about it when we get back. You'll definitely have a big surprise," the 5-clawed golden dragon said mysteriously. Tangzheng was stunned and wanted to ask, but seeing that the 5-clawed golden dragon was tight-lipped, he dismissed the idea. Since it was a surprise and not a scare, then there was no problem. Moreover, even if it was a scare, he was not afraid. Although there were many dangers in Langya Pavilion, he was not the same as before. With such a powerful strength, he would always have the ability to protect himself. The Tree of Life had been watching Tangzheng. Seeing his changes, it said in a deep voice, "The great world has successfully advanced, and you have personally experienced the changes. If the ghost realm disappears, then our world will be even more powerful. For you cultivators, cultivation will be faster. Isn't this a good thing?" Clearly, the will of the Tree of Life had not disappeared. Tangzheng was unmoved. He looked at the Tree of Life indifferently and said, You've seen the power of the ghost realm before. Do you really want to start a war between the two realms? Without waiting for the Tree of Life to answer, Tang Jing shook his head resolutely. I won't mess around with you. The Tree of Life was resentful and helpless. Since you have the ability to protect yourself, then we will take our leave. I hope you will take care of yourself. In the past, Tang Jing was worried that the Tree of Life would be harmed. After all, Xing Feng had used a device to take away a portion of the sap. But today was different from the past. The Tree of Life's ability to protect itself was more than enough. Unless it was a very powerful expert, the Tree of Life would not be threatened. Whether it was Qiyu or the old subordinates of the Yellow Emperor, they would not harm the Tree of Life. This was because it was related to the spiritual energy of this great world. Without the Tree of Life, the human world would be reduced to a small world, which would do them more harm than good. The Tree of Life was silent for a moment and said, I hope you can change your mind one day. Tang Jing snorted and said resolutely, there will be no such day. Seeing Tang Jing turn around and leave, Heaven Monk looked at the Tree of Life with a complicated expression, and also left. The vast desert turned into a grassland, leaving behind only the towering Tree of Life and this green oasis that was exuding a thriving life force. The two of them saw the entire desert turn into an oasis along the way. Their eyes were filled with shock, and they could not help but fall into silence. After walking out of the desert, Tang Jing stopped in his tracks. With a thought, Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishir simultaneously flew out of the Sumeru world. The two of them had a cautious look on their faces, completely focused, as if they were preparing to fight to the death. But when they saw the lush green scene in front of them, they were stunned at the same time. Where is this? Tang Jing laughed involuntarily and said, We have retreated to the edge of the desert. Edge of the desert? Yi Dingdang frowned and looked into the distance. How was this a desert? This was clearly an oasis. Fang Shishir also had the same question and said innocently, This is not a desert. The desert no longer exists and has turned into an oasis. The Tree of Life has already turned our world into a large world. After the rain fell, it became like this. Tang Jing gave a brief introduction. Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishir looked at each other in dismay. They did not think that it would be so miraculous, especially since Yi Dingdang was a cultivator. They could not help but say with some envy, You said that after becoming a large world, this world would be more suitable for cultivators to cultivate and live. Then wouldn't the living space for us cultivators become smaller and smaller? If I had known this earlier, I would not have learned martial arts in the past. Wouldn't it have been better if I had directly cultivated magic like Shishir? Seeing the depressed expression on Yi Dingdang's face, Tang Jing's head moved. The carefree Yi Dingdang rarely had such a depressed expression. It was obvious that this matter had a great impact on her. Dingdang, don't belittle yourself like this. Didn't Tang Jing say that? Cultivators can also cultivate to become very powerful, and not lose out to cultivators in the slightest. Fang Shishir held her best friend's hand and consoled her. The two of them advanced and retreated together. Their friendship deepened day by day, and they had already become very good friends. Yi Dingdang pouted with an embarrassed expression and said with a bitter smile, Don't comfort me. In the future, I will definitely not be your opponent. When the time comes, don't bully me. Fang Shishir's expression became cold and said, Dingdang, what are you saying? How could I bully you? No matter what I become, I will always be your best friend. I will protect you and will never bully you. Yi Dingdang was extremely moved and tightly held Fang Shishir's hand. Cough cough. Tang Jing coughed and interrupted the two of them. He looked at them and laughed involuntarily, saying, With a man like me here, who would dare bully you? You are my women. If anyone dares to bully you, I will beat them until their mother can't recognize them. This was the first time Tang Jing had revealed his identity to the two of them at the same time. Fang Shishir was greatly embarrassed and her beautiful face immediately turned red. She punched Tang Jing and said coquettishly, You're talking nonsense again. Yi Dingdang glared at Tang Jing, but was not as coquettish. She stood on the same side as Fang Shishir and said, He's just so shameless. Let's ignore him. Seeing that Yi Dingdang had finally walked out of her depressed mood, Tang Zheng let out a sigh of relief. He secretly noted this matter down in his heart. He had many martial artists by his side. If he could not find a good way out for the martial artists, then it would be very troublesome. The cultivators were getting stronger and stronger. It was already an irreversible situation. However, he had to find a way to make the martial artists stronger as well. Only then could the balance be maintained. Moreover, if the martial artists by his side became stronger, then it would be a great help to him. What about the demons in the end? Fang Shishi raised her head and asked curiously. They all left. However, they took away a portion of the heaven and earth magnetite. Therefore, we have no way to rebuild the stairway to heaven. Tang Zheng said disappointedly. Yi Dingdang glared at him and said disappointedly. We came here with untold hardships, but who would have thought that in the end, it would all be for naught? Qi Yu and those people are too hateful. That's right. Qi Yu took over Song Yu's body and fought with us. In the end, because of Shura, he did not gain any advantage. However, their goal was achieved, so they directly left. What, Qi Yu took over Song Yu's body? Yi Dingdang shouted in shock. Yes. Why did Qi Yu take over Song Yu's body? Can't he take over other people's bodies? Yi Dingdang was indignant. She originally thought that she would never see Song Yu's face again. Who would have thought that Qi Yu would take over that body? Wouldn't that mean that she would have to see that face again in the future? Although it was no longer Song Yu, that face had left too many memories in her. Just looking at it made her feel uncomfortable. Qi Yu was forced to take over Song Yu's body. This was not what he wanted. What he wanted the most was my body, but he did not have the ability. Tang Zheng explained. He still wants your body. What wishful thinking. When Yi Dingdang heard this, she suddenly felt that compared to taking over Tang Zheng's body, taking over Song Yu's body seemed to be better. What was done was done. No matter what, she had no choice but to accept this reality. She fiercely said, You must think of a way to teach Qi Yu a lesson in the future. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily. Only the fearless Yi Dingdang would use this guy to describe Qi Yu. Other people would never dare to do so. After all, Qi Yu's fierce reputation was not something that ordinary people could compare to. It's a pity that my war soul sword was taken away by Qi Yu. He is really too cunning. Purposely using the sword spirit to fuse with the war soul sword is actually burying a nail. Once he summons it, the war soul sword will betray him. This was also one of Tang Zheng's biggest regrets. The war soul sword had accompanied him all the way and witnessed his growth. It was like an inseparable part of him, but now that it had fallen into Qi Yu's hands, it made him feel disappointed and frustrated. The war soul sword has also fallen into Qi Yu's hands? Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishi exclaimed at the same time. They were very clear on what the war soul sword meant to Tang Zheng. Yeah, but it's not a big deal. Tang Zheng pretended to be carefree and said, I still have the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows. With that thought, he thought about the matter of the artifact spirit. The sword soul and the blade soul could both leave the magic treasure. Could he summon the artifact spirit of the heaven-shocking bow and the shooting sun arrows? Once the artifact spirit was drawn out, the magic treasure's attack power would increase greatly. He urgently needed to increase his fighting strength, so this was a way. However, he could only go back and practice it step by step. Although Tang Zheng was calm on the surface, Fang Shishi and Yi Dingdang were very clear on his true feelings. They secretly made up their minds that they would think of a way to take back the war soul sword in the future. Chapter 1178. Tang Zheng's group returned to the capital. Along the way, they saw the changes brought about by the Tree of Life. Ordinary people wouldn't notice much, but they observed in detail and found many clues. The further they went from the Tree of Life, the weaker the miracles brought about by the Tree of Life. However, the vegetation was lush, and the color was much better than before, emitting a kind of spirituality. They even saw some animals in the distance. They were different from ordinary animals, and there was a trace of wisdom in their eyes. Tang Zheng asked Tian Chanzi curiously. Tian Chanzi didn't find it strange, and explained that this was a miracle brought about by the outside world. When the rain fell on the divine great land, whether it was plants or animals, Once they were nourished by it, the possibility of them becoming spirits increased greatly. Especially many animals and plants that lived in seclusion deep in the mountains, and were on the verge of becoming spirits, would truly become spirits because of this water. From now on, there would be many more demons on the earth. In the end, Tian Chanzi concluded, "This is the outside world. You can slowly experience this new world." There were unknown changes in the world, but for the people in the big city, their lives were still the same. They were not affected by the rain in the slightest. It was just that the air was fresher, and the smog that had plagued the capital for many years had unknowingly disappeared. Looking at the bustling crowd and the crowded streets, Tang Zheng's expression was complicated, and he said meaningfully, "I'm afraid that the peaceful lives of these people will never return." Tian Chanzi shook his head and said, "You're wrong. The lives of ordinary people won't change much. You haven't lived in ancient times, so you don't know the situation of the outside world. The stronger the strong, the greater the responsibility they have to shoulder. They won't easily disturb the lives of ordinary people." Tian Chanzi frowned and asked, "Didn't you always say that the big world is a world where the strong preys on the weak?" "That's for cultivators. The lives of ordinary people are actually very far away from the lives of cultivators, so there's no need to worry too much. The real chaos was in ancient times. Ever since the gradual development of civilization, the order of the world has been established. The real powerhouses will not harm ordinary people. Instead, they will form an invisible alliance to ensure the lives of ordinary people," Tian Chanzi said solemnly, describing another world to Tang Zheng. "Is this the duty of the righteous path?" Tang Zheng asked thoughtfully. Tian Chanzi looked at him approvingly, as if he was a promising child, and proudly said, "Of course, this is the duty of the righteous path, to prevent the demons from stirring up trouble, and to protect the peace of the world." At this moment, Tang Zheng couldn't help but have a new understanding of the righteous path. The way the demons did things really made him hate them, especially when they used the mountain river blood sacrifice great array, sacrificing countless lives to achieve their own goals. This kind of ruthless method made Tang Zheng tremble in fear, so he naturally didn't have a good impression of them. Yi Dingdang and Feng Shishir looked at Tang Zheng with eyes full of love, as well as a strong sense of pride. Without a doubt, the responsibility on the shoulders of the person they loved was not small, but which girl didn't love a matchless hero? The few of them returned to the front of the villa. Someone had already been notified, and many people were waiting at the entrance to welcome them. Other than Wu and Empyrean Fairy, the other women were not at home. Their hearts for work were not weak, so in the middle of the day, they were busy with their own work. Seeing them come back safe and sound, Lan Yu quickly walked over and impatiently welcomed them. After she took the pill, her power increased greatly. She was even more grateful to her son, and missed him even more. She thought about him day and night, unable to sleep. Although they had not seen each other for a short period of 10 days, seeing her son, her feelings immediately surged. She looked at him with burning eyes and said, "You're back." Tang Zheng felt her fluctuating emotions and nodded. "Is everything okay at home?" "Everything is fine, how about you?" "I'm fine." Tang Zheng raised his head and saw that everyone was staring at him, so he told everyone to return to the house, especially Empyrean Fairy, who looked at him with a strange gaze. He knew that she felt it more deeply than the others, so she definitely had many questions. Whoosh! Xiaobai appeared out of nowhere, and with a flash of white light, it jumped onto Tang Zheng's shoulder. It shook its head and kept scratching Tang Zheng's hair. Tang Zheng laughed involuntarily and patted the back of its head, stopping it from running amok. The Scarlet Lunar Beast and Little Yu Yu also walked out at the same time. The father and son were already very close, walking side by side. Their auras were different, especially Little Yu Yu, whose body was shining and her eyes were full of energy. It was obvious that her cultivation had increased by a lot. With the help of the Scarlet Lunar Beast, it was natural for Little Yu Yu to increase her cultivation. The Scarlet Lunar Beast looked at Tang Zheng with a flash of surprise. It could also see that Tang Zheng's cultivation had increased, and the aura around his body had changed. It could not help but feel excited. Tang Zheng had brought more and more surprises to it, making it difficult for it to digest. Everyone returned to the living room, and the sorcerer tribe disciples returned to their posts to be on guard. Now that the various forces were mixed and had become a large world, Tang Zheng's protection of this place was even stricter. Naturally, he would not let the sorcerer tribe disciples let down their guard. Tang Dahai was resting in another villa, and did not participate in the discussion. Lan Yu Wu Junshan Wu and the Empyrean Fairy focused their attention on Tang Zheng's face. The Empyrean Fairy was the first to break the silence. She asked, "Has the Tree of Life succeeded?" Tang Zheng nodded without hesitation. He knew that he could not hide it from the Empyrean Fairy. He said truthfully, "Now our world has been promoted to a large world." Wu Junshan and Lan Yu looked at each other, and a flash of sadness appeared in their eyes. They had been taught about the difference between a large world and a small world. They knew that in a large world, cultivators' cultivation would be twice the result with half the effort, and martial artists would decline. Yi Dingdong's heart was filled with sorrow as she saw all of this with her eyes. Without leaving a trace, she nudged Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng was slightly stunned as he also discovered some clues. However, he could not do anything and could only remember it in his heart. The Empyrean Fairy's face flashed with excitement. With her cultivation and temperament, she had already trained herself to be calm, but this time, her heart could not help but stir. "Then did your mission go smoothly?" the Empyrean Fairy asked curiously. Tang Zheng's expression darkened. He shook his head and said, "We failed." "What failed?" The others were shocked and pricked up their ears at the same time. "How is that possible?" "It really did fail. Qiyu brought the demon race here, and fought a great battle with us. They took away more than 10 heaven and earth profound stones, so it is impossible for us to reconstruct the stairway to heaven." Tang Zheng explained. Everyone's faces immediately turned pale. This was originally a safety measure left behind, and they did not say that they would use it immediately. However, it was a failure at the last step. In the end, it made everyone feel sad. Seeing that everyone was in low spirits, Tang Zheng coughed. He clapped his hands and said encouragingly, "This is only a small hurdle. We can take big strides forward. Although the demon race is strong, we are not without a way to deal with them." "Oh, what way?" Everyone's interest was aroused. They all raised their heads. On the way back, Tang Zheng thought carefully and thought of a way. This method was very risky, but he had no other choice. The Shura was strong, and was not inferior to Qiyu. Qiyu's strength would recover, but the Shura's fighting strength would not stagnate. After unlocking his wisdom, the Shura's strength would increase by leaps and bounds. This was Tang Zheng's judgment. As for whether it would become a reality, it was still unknown. This gave him an idea, and that was to use the Shura to deal with Qiyu. Together with them and the witch race, it was not necessarily that they did not have the ability to resist. At least, they could stop the advance of the demon race and protect the civilians. This was a last resort. But other than this method, he did not have any better ideas for the time being. As for the emperor's old subordinates, Tang Zheng did not count on them. Although they were the source of the righteous path, they had a lot of grudges with him. They would definitely not let it go. He had to be on guard at all times. The key now was to convince the Shura to cooperate with him. As for making the Shura submit, Tang Zheng did not dare to have extravagant hopes. After all, the Shura was too strong and had a cruel nature. No one else could suppress him. Only his Ksitigarbha Sutra could. Seeing everyone looking at him curiously, Tang Zheng revealed the riddle and said, "Shura." Empyrean Fairy and the others were suspicious. They did not know that the Shura had unlocked his wisdom. Tian Chanzi had an idea. He looked at Tang Zheng with burning eyes and said, "You want to use the Shura to deal with Qiyu? Although the Shura has unlocked his wisdom, he does not listen to your orders." "The Shura has unlocked his wisdom?" Empyrean Fairy also knew of the Shura's existence. She understood what kind of existence he was. Hearing that the Shura had unlocked his wisdom, she could not help but open her mouth wide. Yes, the Ksitigarbha Sutra has unlocked the Shura's wisdom. Moreover, he is no longer a big deal. He has become a normal person. It's just that his nature is cruel and bloodthirsty. I have suppressed him in the Sumeru world. Tang Zheng briefly explained. Empyrean Fairy was skeptical and asked, "You really think that the Shura can fight against Chiyu? You should know that Chiyu is not an ordinary person's strength." As the daughter of the Emperor of Heaven, Empyrean Fairy knew more about Chiyu than ordinary people. She had also heard the Emperor of Heaven talk about the past and present. Chiyu was the most ambitious and ruthless person in tens of thousands of years. If he had not met the Yellow Emperor, Chiyu would have definitely unified the world. At that time, it was unknown what kind of scene it would be. Empyrean Fairy was influenced by what she saw and heard. Naturally, she was in awe of Chiyu. She could not help but doubt whether Tang Zheng's plan was feasible. Tang Zheng had been with Chiyu for too long, and did not have the same reverence as her. He said disapprovingly, "No matter how strong Chiyu is, he is still a person. As long as he is a person, he can be defeated. He only needs to find a way and method. The Shura and Chiyu have already fought a great battle. Chiyu could not do anything to the Shura. Instead, he almost suffered a double loss, so I think this method can be tried." Chapter 1179. Tian Chanzi pondered for a moment before nodding. "Since you're so confident, let's give it a try." Pinnacle Novel, X. Seeing that he supported Tang Zheng, the others had no objections. "There's no time to lose. You guys go rest first. I'll go back to my room to cultivate." Tang Zheng was impatient. The current situation was dangerous. He couldn't let go of any time. He had to seize every opportunity to become stronger. Everyone was affected by his emotions, and went back to their rooms to cultivate. Lan Yu had a lot to say, but she didn't have the chance to. She sighed and went back to her room with her husband. "Don't sigh. It's a good thing that our son is working so hard. If he was lazy, you would be worried." Wu Junshan saw through his wife's thoughts and comforted her. Lan Yu raised her eyelids and glanced at her husband, saying, "Your heart is really big. Our son has great ambitions, and as parents, we are naturally happy. But you don't know the danger he is facing. You heard him describe it in just a few words, but do you know how dangerous it is for him this time?" Wu Junshan was sad. Of course he knew. "I thought that after I took the pill, I could share his burden. I didn't think that I was still too weak and was left far behind. Now that we're in the outside world, the cultivators will become stronger and stronger. We martial artists will become a burden and be swept into the trash bin of history. Aren't you worried? Don't you have a sense of urgency? If we can't help our son, then what kind of parents are we? How can you expect our son to recognize us?" Lan Yu said earnestly, her face becoming more and more gloomy. "Our son isn't that kind of person." Wu Junshan said resentfully. Lan Yu snorted, saying, "Of course he's not that kind of person. But you've been left far behind. Do you still have the nerve to stay by his side? Wasn't our original goal to stay by his side to protect us? Now it's reversed and he's the one protecting us. Then what do you think we should do?" Wu Junshan was helpless. "We have to become stronger, much stronger." Lan Yu's eyes burned with passion as she said. Looking at his wife in a daze, Wu Junshan felt a spark ignite in his heart. He nodded heavily. "I know what you're thinking, and I support you. But how can we make it happen? Reading 10,000 books is not as good as walking 10,000 li. If we just sit here and scratch our heads, we won't be able to come up with a good idea. Why don't we leave and travel 10,000 rivers and mountains? Perhaps we'll have some unexpected gains." Lan Yu's heart was moved as she spoke. "Leave?" Wu Junshan glanced at the door and said, "Are you willing to leave your son?" Lan Yu's eyes flashed with tenderness, and the love of a loving mother was unmistakable. But in the end, she still gritted her teeth and nodded resolutely. "This is for a better future with my son. This temporary sacrifice is worth it." Seeing his wife so resolute, Wu Junshan thought for a while and agreed. "Okay, then we'll leave. We'll definitely come back in the future and reunite with our son." Their eyes silently intertwined with each other, flashing with a resolute light. They were not ordinary people. Since they had decided, they would not hesitate. After leaving behind a letter, the two of them walked out of the room and arrived in front of Tang Zheng's room. After staring at it for a long time, they turned around and left resolutely. The Witch Clan disciples discovered their whereabouts, But they did not care. After all, they often went out. Tang Zheng did not know that his biological parents had already left home. He probably never would have dreamed that they would make such a choice. In fact, this choice was the result of accumulation over time. It was not surprising. Lan Yu and Wu Junshan had always felt a deep sense of pressure when facing Tang Zheng. It was just that they had always buried it in their hearts and did not reveal it. They had always wanted to help Tang Zheng to make up for their regrets from many years ago. However, Tang Zheng's pace was too fast, far surpassing them. Even if they ran, they would not be able to catch up, so now, not only were they unable to help Tang Zheng, they were gradually becoming a burden. They could not accept this result at all, so they had no choice but to make this choice. If they succeeded, they would have taken a huge step on the road of redeeming this family. If they failed, it was also their choice. They had no regrets. In the room, Tang Zheng sat cross-legged, his mind immersed in the Sumeru world. Xianin was still behaving like a lunatic. She walked around aimlessly in the vast Sumeru world. The Sumeru world was very large, far larger than the tomb of Qin Shi Huang. That was only a small area. Tang Zheng knew enough about the Sumeru world, so he specially divided it into several areas. Shura and Xianin were not in the same area, so naturally, there would be no intersection and danger. Previously, he had put Yi Dingdang and Fang Shishir into the Sumeru world without worry, so he placed them in another area, cutting off their contact, so there was no danger at all. Glancing at Xianin, Tang Zheng shook his head inwardly. Whether this woman was pretending to be crazy or really crazy, she still had a lot of information on her, so Tang Zheng temporarily imprisoned her. No matter what tricks she had up her sleeve, there was nothing she could do. Shura. Tang Zheng's attention shifted to the Azura, and saw that he had already opened his eyes, staring at the void in front of him like a tiger eyeing its prey. At this moment, Tang Zheng's consciousness had entered the Sumeru world, and there was no real person. What's the use of imprisoning me? Shura's lips curled into a cold smile as he asked mockingly. Tang Zheng's heart trembled. From Shura's reaction, he could see that his intelligence had increased again, clearly due to the effect of the Ksitigarbha Sutra. Shura was very cunning, knowing that Tang Zheng had to use the Ksitigarbha Sutra to suppress him. This was exactly what he wanted, but Tang Zheng did not have a way to break it. If I don't imprison you, could it be that I will allow you to willfully slaughter the innocent and destroy all life? Tang Zheng asked, his voice resounding in the air like rolling thunder, shaking the air to the point of buzzing. Haha, I'm not a human, what's wrong with killing a few? Shura did not think much of it and laughed wantonly. Tang Zheng frowned and said sternly, with me here, I won't let you be so arrogant and despotic. You think you can suppress me for life? Shura asked disdainfully. Tang Zheng's head thumped. He was not completely sure. After Shura's intelligence increased, and his strength increased, would the Ksitigarbha Sutra still be effective? But this was not a question he should be thinking about, so he said with a cold face, Shura, no matter how much you say it, it's useless. Now that you are under my control, you must listen to me. I only listen to myself. No one can make me listen to orders. Shura raised his head and said arrogantly. Chapter 1180. Hearing Tang Zheng's meaningful words, the Shura snorted disdainfully and said frivolously, then let's see how you're going to make me listen to you. Tang Zheng already had a plan and asked, you want to keep increasing your intelligence, right? The Shura rolled his eyes and muttered, you already know the answer. The way you increase your intelligence is through the Ksitigarbha Sutra, right? The Shura didn't say anything and couldn't be bothered to answer. Tang Zheng didn't get angry and continued to ask, in this world, other than the Dizong of Goguryeo, I'm the only one who knows the Ksitigarbha Sutra. If I don't cooperate with you, do you think your intelligence will increase rapidly? The Shura's eyes suddenly widened and said, what can I do if you don't cooperate? If you have the ability to suppress me without using the Ksitigarbha Sutra, then see what I'll do? Ha. Tang Zheng didn't answer, and instead laughed loudly. This laughter made the Shura panic and he asked suspiciously, what are you laughing at? I'm laughing at how stupid you are. Tang Zheng coldly reprimanded. I'm stupid? I've already unlocked my intelligence and you still dare to call me stupid? The Shura retorted hoarsely. This performance was exactly what Tangjung wanted. In fact, he had already evaluated the Shura's intelligence. In the desert, the Shura's intelligence had just been unlocked and wasn't high, equivalent to a kindergarten child. Later on, after being suppressed by the Ksitigarbha Sutra, his intelligence increased by a lot, and was now equivalent to a primary school student. The difference between him and Tangjung was like heaven and earth. Seeing that the Shura didn't have any shrewdness and was easily angered, Tangjung was even more certain of this point. This made things even easier to handle. Of course you're stupid. Do you think you can rely on brute force to fight for the world and contend against Chiyu? Your thinking is too simple. If this isn't stupidity, then what is? The Ksitigarbha Sutra may have opened up your wisdom, but you are currently like a 3-year-old child. So how could you possibly contend against Chiyu? Tangjung purposely used a disdainful tone as he spoke with disdain. This set of provocation was very effective. The Shura was immediately speechless and panted heavily. Unless your intelligence improves by leaps and bounds, you won't be able to compete with the vicious and merciless Chiyu. Tangjung deliberately directed his hatred towards Chiyu. It was not unreasonable to say that public opinion could distort the truth, and accumulation could corrode the bones. A person with the intelligence of a child would not notice if hatred was instilled into their ears. They would only accept it bit by bit, and it would seep deep into their bones. Tangjung had used this method to make Shura view Chiyu as an enemy. Even if he couldn't win Shura's heart, he would still plant hatred for Chiyu in Shura's heart. Moreover, the two of them had already experienced a life-and-death battle, which only deepened the Shura's hatred. This was a method he had no choice but to use. It wasn't very clever, but when he thought about how Chiyu had sacrificed hundreds of millions of lives, as well as the harm he could bring to the world, Tangjung couldn't care less. The Shura's eyes flickered with hesitation and hatred. In the end, he stomped his foot and said through gritted teeth, "Then what do you think?" This method of implanting hatred had worked. I'll continuously use the Ksitigarbha Sutra to increase your intelligence, so that you'll have a way to contend against Chiyu in the future. The Shura's eyes lit up and he nodded. This is a good idea. In fact, he knew that he was mentally deficient, which was why he was so excited. He knew exactly how useful the Ksitigarbha Sutra was to him. Apart from Tangjung, he really had no other way. There's no free lunch in this world. Everything has a price. In exchange, you must listen to my orders. Tangjung added, pouring cold water on the Shura. The Shura flew into a rage. You're still giving up and want me to listen to you. Tangjung remained unmoved and said indifferently, whether you agree or not is up to you. In any case, I've already told you the way, but time waits for no one. If your intelligence increases, your cultivation will increase even faster. Chiyu is not an ordinary person. If you wait for him to leave you far behind, then you will never be able to catch up to him, and you will completely lose your chance. In the face of Tangjung's fanning the flames, the Shura fell into silence. Tangjung was not in a hurry to avoid being seen through by the other party. He deliberately played it down and said, "Think about it yourself. I'll wait for your answer." With that, his consciousness left Sumeru world, leaving the Shura to think by himself. Bang bang bang. A series of strong knocks on the door rang out. Marshall's voice came in. Tangjung, quickly open the door. Master and mistress are gone. What? Tangjung stood up and rushed out with large strides, only to see Marshall anxiously standing at the door. Ever since the two of them met, he had rarely seen Marshall like this, so his heart skipped a beat. He held onto her shoulders and said gently, "Calm down, tell me clearly what exactly happened." Marshall said anxiously, "Just now, I went to find master and mistress, but there was no response after knocking on the door for a long time. Then, I rushed in and found that the room was empty. Then, I went to ask the Witch Clan disciples and they saw master and mistress leave." Tangjung did not notice anything unusual and asked, "What's so strange about that? They are adults now, so they must have gone out by themselves. They will come back, so there's no need to make a fuss." "I think so too, but when I called master and mistress, their phones were turned off. It was as if they had disappeared. Tang Zheng explained. Marshall stubbornly shook his head. No, that's not right. I feel very bad this time. Something must have happened. Seeing how persistent Marshall was, Tang Zheng patted her shoulder and said, They are not ordinary people. Their martial arts have reached perfection. How could ordinary people be their match? If it was before, I would definitely not be worried. But now that there are strong enemies everywhere, and such powerful cultivators have appeared, I can't help but worry. Moreover, all of this is too abnormal. Marshall insisted. Seeing how persistent Marshall was, Tang Zheng's head sank. He knew that she was not an unreasonable person and said in a deep voice, Then let's go to their room and see if there are any clues. The capital was indeed not peaceful. Although Lan Yu and Wu Junshan's strength was not shallow, it was different from the past. What if others could not deal with Tang Zheng and came to deal with them? After all, they were his biological parents. Moreover, the chief had a grudge with them, so he had to be on guard. Wu Lu was at a loss as he followed beside Tang Zheng, firmly holding onto his hand. The others heard the commotion and walked out one after another. After hearing the whole story, Fang Shishir comforted him. Marshall, don't worry. Uncle and Auntie are both experts. Moreover, the heavens help the worthy. Nothing will happen to them. Marshall's face was ugly as he shook his head bitterly, not knowing how to reply. Everyone came to a villa next door. Wu Junshan, his wife and Tang Dahai all lived in this villa, and were neighbors with Tang Zheng and the others. This was to give Tang Zheng and the others some space. Tang Dahai had also heard the commotion. Seeing Tang Zheng come in, he hurriedly walked over and grabbed Tang Zheng's other hand. He said earnestly, Little Zheng, they are your parents. You must find them and ensure that they are safe. Tang Dahai and Wu Junshan got along very well. One was his biological parents, while the other was the person who raised Tang Zheng with a handful of shit and urine. Because of the bond of Tang Zheng, the two sides were tightly tied together and had a natural sense of intimacy. Looking at his grandfather's anxious eyes, Tang Zheng supported him and comforted him. Grandfather, don't worry. With me here, nothing will happen to them. Tang Dahai heaved a sigh of relief and looked at his grandson with gratification, saying, With your words, I am relieved. They are all good people and have always cared about you. If they hear your words, they will definitely be very happy. Tang Zheng's heart moved. He had already decided to ease his relationship with his biological parents. It was just that he had been running around and did not have the time to do so in his daily life. Creak. The door opened, and Tang Zheng walked in with large strides. Sweeping his eyes around, he saw that their bedroom was very simple, but it did not lose its warmth. This was a bedroom that Lan Yu had specially decorated. It was less graceful and luxurious, but had more of a rural coziness. He walked in and glanced around. It was as if he could breathe in their air. This was the smell of kinship, causing his heart to tremble slightly. What is this? Yi Dingdang mischievously walked around the room and found an envelope on a small desk in the corner. The words to Tang Zheng were written on it. Tang Zheng, this is for you. Yi Dingdang handed the letter to Tang Zheng. Tang Zheng took it in surprise and glanced at it. It was Lan Yu's handwriting, graceful, but with a sense of power. The words were like the person, leaving a deep impression. The attention of the others was attracted, and they all stared at the envelope. Tang Zheng opened the envelope. There was only a thin piece of paper with densely packed words on it. The others wanted to see what was written on it, but when they saw Tang Zheng's eyes fall on the letter and his expression change, they understood that there was a change in the situation. When Tang Zheng finished reading, they all asked with concern, What is written on it? They have left, Tang Zheng said with a complicated expression. There were too many emotions between his eyebrows. For a moment, it was difficult to describe clearly. Left. Wu was shocked. Why would they leave? They are living well here. Moreover, you are still here. How could they be willing to leave? Wu understood his master and master's wife very well. They could sacrifice their lives for Tang Zheng, so how could they be willing to leave him? This did not make sense. But after Tang Zheng read the letter, he understood the cause and effect. He also somewhat understood the two of them. Take a look for yourselves. Tang Zheng passed the letter to Wu, and the others surrounded him. Pairs of eyes curiously stared at the letter, and gradually, shock and confusion appeared on their faces. Tang Dahai did not join in the fun to read the letter. Instead, he looked at Tang Zheng with a burning gaze. He and his grandson had been together day and night for more than 10 years. They relied on each other for survival. He knew Tang Zheng very well. From his reaction, he could see some clues. They left because of you? Tang Dahai sighed and asked faintly. Tang Zheng nodded bitterly and said, I didn't expect that I would give them so much trouble. Chapter 1181. Hearing his grandfather talk about his daily life, the image of Wu Junshan and Lan Yu couldn't help but fill up in his heart, becoming clearer and more vivid. Among them, their meticulous care for his grandfather made Tang Zheng feel ashamed of his inferiority. This was his matter. He did not do it, but they did it for him. Ever since he embarked on the path of a cultivator, the time he spent with his grandfather became less and less. If not for the two of them accompanying his grandfather would definitely not be so happy. After all, the capital was a completely unfamiliar environment. Without his old friends and without Tang Zheng by his side, he would definitely be very lonely. Tang Zheng blamed himself. Looking at his grandfather with an incomparably complicated expression, he sincerely said, Grandfather, I did not do well enough. Tang Dahai kindly smiled and interrupted Tang Zheng's words, patting Tang Zheng's head like when he was young. However, he was already shorter than Tang Zheng, so he could not pat his head like when he was young. He could only touch his temples. Little Zheng, there is something I have always wanted to say. Even though they made a mistake in the past, how can a person never make a mistake forever? Knowing one's mistake and being able to change is the greatest virtue. The old ancestors' words are reasonable, so you should forgive them. Tang Dahai earnestly advised. Tang Zheng's eyes turned red as he heavily nodded his head. Yes, grandfather, I have already decided to forgive them and ease the relationship. Tang Dahai smiled with gratification. I knew that my grandson was a reasonable person. He just needed time. If they heard your words, they would definitely be very gratified. But they've already left. Tang Zheng was disappointed and frustrated. But they will come back, won't they? Tang Dahai blinked his eyes and asked with a smile. Actually, I understand their feelings. You are still a child, so it is difficult for you to understand all of this. They don't need to leave at all. Why would I dislike them for being weak and not being able to help me? Tang Zheng said in confusion. These were the words in the letter. Tang Zheng felt that it was strange, and did not understand their thoughts. Tang Dahai let out a long sigh, but he understood their difficulties and said, You don't think so, but they will, because they owed you in the past and now want to make it up to you. Now that you are walking in front of them, they are powerless to make it up to you, so the guilt in their hearts will become stronger and stronger. They must find a solution, but they can't let you worry about it. They can only solve it themselves, so they will leave. Do you understand? Hearing his grandfather's analysis, Tang Zheng's heart fiercely jumped a few times. He was not a father, so he did not understand this kind of feelings, but he felt that his grandfather's analysis was reasonable. He helplessly shook his head and said, Since they have such thoughts, they will definitely not let me. Tang Dahai nodded his head. Of course. Wu's gaze finally left the letter and asked anxiously, Then will they come back? They will definitely. Tang Dahai replied without hesitation. Little Zheng is their only tie. No matter how difficult it is, they will overcome it one by one and come back to meet you. Seeing his grandfather so confident, Tang Zheng believed him a little. The old man had always left some leeway when he spoke, but this time he was so sure. Tang Dahai understood their thoughts, which was why he was so confident. Marshall still could not hide his worry and said, But it's so chaotic outside. What if they encounter danger? Especially Qiyu, the Emperor's old subordinates, and even the 100 Transformations Star Lord. These people are all very strong, and knowing their identities, that would be terrible. Tang Zheng patted her hand and said, Don't worry, you have to believe in them. You have been with them for more than 10 years. Don't tell me you don't have this bit of confidence in them. No matter how dangerous this world is, they still have the power to protect themselves. Marshall was at a loss for words. She was worried and confused. She understood the strength of the two the best. For Wu Junshan to be able to sit in the position of martial sect master, how could he be an ordinary person? Other than martial arts, there were very few people who could compare to him in other aspects, so he would not be in too much danger. When the others read the letter and heard Tang Dahai's analysis, they also understood the difficulties of the two. It turned out that the thoughts of a parent were much more complicated than that of a son. It was far from what they could imagine. Only Tang Dahai, who had painstakingly raised Tang Zheng, would be able to empathize with him. Marshall finally heaved a sigh of relief, but his face was still embarrassed as he said, "Tang Zheng, can I ask you for a favor?" Seeing her abnormal expression, Tang Zheng asked curiously, "What is it? Just say it, I will definitely do it." Towards his own woman he did not make any excuses, nor did he have any thoughts of avoiding her. No matter how difficult the matter was, he would do his best to complete it. "When they come back, can you reconcile with them?" Marshall looked at Tang Zheng expectantly and asked. "Reconcile?" Tang Zheng was slightly startled. He knew what these two words meant. This was not a simple reconciliation, but to recognize them as parents. Although Tang Zheng already had plans to ease their relationship, he still did not want to accept them immediately. Their actions this time had undoubtedly stimulated Tang Zheng, causing waves to surge in his heart. He seemed to understand that it was not easy to be a parent. Marshall looked at Tang Zheng with sparkling eyes and asked, "Can I?" This was the greatest wish of her master and mistress. She had always chosen to let nature take its course, but their actions this time had stimulated her, so she wanted to help them. Tang Zheng clenched his teeth. Marshall's request was not excessive. He did not need to go through a mountain of blades or a sea of flames. He only needed to cross the hurdle in his heart. Whether it was as a son or as a husband, if he was unable to agree to this request, then what was his so-called love? How trustworthy were his previous promises? He took a deep breath and slowly opened his mouth. Marshall looked at him worriedly, both anticipating and afraid of his answer. This was not something else. She knew that if it was something else, no matter how difficult it was, he would not hesitate to agree. But this time, it was too special. If he could not cross the hurdle in his heart, he would not be able to agree. What if he refused? Marshall did not dare to imagine. "All right, I promise you," Tang Zheng said resolutely. "When they come back, I will recognize them. It's not easy for them either." A smile immediately blossomed on Marshall's face, as if a heavy burden had been lifted off her shoulders. She could not help but hold on to Tang Zheng's arm and kiss him on the cheek, her eyes revealing a deep sense of love. The others were flabbergasted as they watched this scene. Although her relationship with Tang Zheng was known to everyone, she had never shown such a bold action in front of others. Marshall immediately realized that he had lost his composure. For the first time, he revealed a bashful expression and lowered his head. However, the corners of his mouth were slightly raised as his heart bloomed with joy. The lover he had chosen was indeed extraordinary. For him to be able to cross the hurdle in his heart, he had not entrusted his life to him in vain. Tang Dahai smiled in relief. This was a sore point in his heart, but he had never revealed it. Now that this matter had been resolved, everyone was happy. He felt that the courage on his shoulders had lightened a lot. This was truly the grandson he had raised himself. Seeing everyone's reaction, Tang Zheng had mixed feelings. He understood that his background affected everyone's hearts. If he insisted on not being able to get over it, everyone would have a sore point in their hearts. This time, everyone was happy. Once he agreed, he felt that the courage on his body had also lightened. In his mind, the figures of the two people involuntarily appeared. Didn't he wish to be able to recognize his parents since he was young? To enjoy the same life as other children? Later on, this thought was forcefully suppressed, to the point that he had almost forgotten about it. Now that his thoughts were clear, this thought that had been suppressed deep in his heart emerged again. If he recognized them, wouldn't he be able to enjoy the kinship he had always dreamed of? Thinking of this, he could not wait to see them. However, he did not show it. When they come back, they will definitely be very happy to know about this. Tang Dahai raised his hand and called out to everyone. This can be considered a good thing. Tonight, everyone will gather together and celebrate. The melancholy of parting was swept away. In the evening, everyone else had returned. Lu Qingmei, Princess Anne, and Li Xiaotian had also returned to the villa. Mu Hongyan was still dealing with the aftermath of the pharmaceutical factory. The new medicine had been approved and would be on the market soon. This was a critical moment and could not be careless. As a workaholic, she worked almost all day. Princess Anne's jewelry auction was coming to an end. She had a bountiful harvest and was constantly showing off to Tang Zheng, as if wanting to win a few words of praise from him. Li Xiaotian smiled and did not say a word. She also stayed in the capital and was not in a hurry to return to the Li Palace. This was because she had received news that the official attitude towards Tang Zheng had already been polarized. Many people already saw him as a huge threat, but some people thought that they should rope him in. Her pillow talk plan had begun to bear fruit. For the high officials in their families who had Li Palace disciples blowing pillow talk, they became the backbone of support for Tang Zheng. The opposition was led by the head of the high officials. Li Xiaotian discovered the signs. Although it was temporarily not too harmful to Tang Zheng, she understood that any danger should be nipped in the bud, and did not treat it lightly. Instead, she stayed in the capital and contacted the Li Palace disciples, thinking of ways to resolve this crisis. Tang Zheng did not know about this matter. Seeing that she did not leave, he did not think too much about it. After the meal, everyone returned to their rooms. Looking at the back of Wu Jin, Tang Zheng's heart moved. He quietly followed her in without a trace and spent the entire night comforting her. The other women saw this and looked at each other in dismay. However, they turned their heads and pretended not to see. The relationship between them was becoming more and more transparent. Everyone was well aware that only the last layer of window paper was left. They carefully maintained it and did not poke the window paper to avoid embarrassment. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.